In Greek mythology, Venus is also called, Ronnie, do you want to do the honors?
Vesperus.
Vesperus, okay? It's Vesperus' star. It is not the Asteri star. It is Vesperus' star. This is a symbol of Vesperus, okay? So once again, all roads lead to Vesperus.
There are two things that I had to report today. One was that I got a haircut yesterday. And the first thing that my sister said when she saw me, we get our haircut by the same person. She went on Friday. I went on Saturday. She said, it looks the same.
I don't think it looks the same. I can see the layers.
Like, it's the same length. I was like, okay.
It's about the shaping.
Thank you for the feedback. I agree with you. But I was complaining about how long my hair was. And she was like, just how there's no length cut off, because she talks like a Gen Z person. That's how she says things. She says, just how there's no length cut off. And that's a sentence to her. So that was what she said in response to my haircut, number one. And then number two is that I had package ramen, Maruchan ramen at 9:30 in the morning this morning. And that was how my day started. That's all I have to say.
I have two follow-ups to what you just said. So first of all,
questions.
No, they're conversation topics. I went out last night, and by out, I mean Derek played a show that started at 6:30 and ended at 8:30. My favorite show schedule. In bed by 10. The fucking best. Excellent. But he played at a bar in DC called the Bullpen. If you're from DC, you know what the Bullpen is. It's basically like the feeder bar into Nats Park. So before Nats games, people will go to the Bullpen. After Nats games, people will go to the Bullpen. It's like Pickles in Baltimore, basically. It only exists because Nats Stadium is right there.
Okay.
So it was me, our friend Shannon. Hey, Shannon, you get a nice shout out. And all these fucking wasted Gen Zers. And I was looking around and I was like, oh my God, first of all, I feel so old. This is ridiculous. Second of all, everyone is smoking cigarettes again. I'm like, are we back to this? Are we doing this? What is going on? Why is everyone smoking cigarettes?
I don't know that anyone left nicotine. I just feel like we went back to cigarettes.
I just feel like we've swung back to cigarettes. And
I don't know.
I wasn't a fan of vaping either, but I'm just like, why are we back on this? I don't know. And this I thought was really funny. Everyone also had digital cameras. So like everyone was taking like photos on their digital cameras and then taking photos on their phone. And I'm like, wait, why are we doubling up here? I don't understand what's going on. But that was like the moment I was like, oh fuck, I'm old. Like I don't understand what's happening anymore with the youth. So I don't know what this is, but
which is so interesting because you think that they could make at this point a digital camera that just like Bluetoothed into your phone so that you could have, I assume the phone is for the instant gratification, which I can understand, but I like the photos that the digital camera produces better.
Is it not exactly the same? I mean, if it were film camera, I would get it, but it's digital camera. I don't get it.
I think digital cameras produce a different type of photo. The Apple presets are like so wild.
Yeah.
Like, they're not. Someone told me a hack and I forget it now. So if anybody remembers, please comment on it. Somebody told me a hack to remove all the presets from your Apple camera. I need to do that because it's gotten insane. It's gotten to the point where I like point my camera at something and I like see everything changing. And I'm like, why? Why are we doing this?
Well, you know how fucked my phone camera is anyways.
I can't talk about your phone.
Wait, I had a second follow-up before the Gen Z questions about what's going on. What was the second thing we talked about? Can't remember.
I ate ramen at 9:30 in the morning.
Oh, yes. I was going to say, was that a throwback to our days? All right, guys. So there was a period of time where Ronnie and I have never lived in the same city, but there was a period of time where we were seeing each other every weekend, which was lovely. We always happened to be in the same city. And what would happen is that inevitably, no matter where we were
back then,
we were more fun. These were our not cigarette smoking, but these were our, bullpen days, as it were.
Yes.
Ronnie would come over or I would go over to her place. And at some point during the day, terribly hungover, we would just order ramen. We would just order ramen from the nearest place. And then we would watch like hours of Disney movies. And then one time we did that. And then we went for a 10-mile run, which was very impressive. I don't think I could do that now.
Certainly not. And I feel like normally always the ramen was the first food of the day.
Yeah.
But it was
ramen for breakfast.
Pre 1 p.m. I would say also, yeah.
I mean, I don't think we were eating ramen before 11 a.m., but I think we might have had some 11:30 ramens.
Yeah. I don't think that the place opened before.
Yeah, most people are not getting ramen for breakfast, but
Shin Ramen was not open before.
Yeah.
11 a.m.
But so was that a throwback to our early 20s?
I suppose. I mean, I also went out last night and woke up and was like, there's only one thing that I can eat right now. And
it is the ultimate hangover cure.
And I'm not going to order it at 9 a.m., but this is when I wake up now. So that's what's happening.
I just think there's such a market for ramen for breakfast for this exact reason. So. Like if you are a proprietor of ramen, I think you should consider on Sunday and Saturday mornings opening up a little early for the breakfast crowd, for the people who need that hit to get their day going.
And from what I understand, I don't think it's so off base. Like I believe in, I know there are things that are more typical to eat for breakfast, but I believe that foods are not necessarily attached to morning versus afternoon in that culture as tightly as American culture. So please consider.
That's all I'm going to say. If someone opened up a ramen breakfast spot, I would go in a heartbeat. I would go immediately. Immediately.
Yes.
All right. I had one other banter topic. You know what? I am going to bring it up because if I don't bring it up now, we're never going to talk about it because it's topical. I can't stop crying about the Kentucky Derby. It was so good. Like the producers did a great job this year. No, but like they
really did.
They really knocked it out of the park with that ending. Out of the park.
Most emotional one.
Oh my God. Okay, so I think the last time I watched the Kentucky Derby was literally with you 8 years ago, if you remember that trip to Florida. Yeah.
Years ago.
I think
that was the last time I watched. I think it was the last time I cared.
The only reason I watched it was because I was at the bullpen and they were like, oh, we're going to pause the show for a second because it's like a sports bra. We're going to watch the Kentucky Derby. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to watch the Kentucky Derby now.
Yeah.
What a good race. I can't stop. Like the trainer, the jockey, the whole thing. I'm like, this is amazing. This is what sports are supposed to be. Like and I cry at sports. So I just keep tearing up and so good. Crying. You should, guys, if you haven't watched the Kentucky Derby, you should check it out. It is 2 minutes of pure action.
2 minutes of pure action. You heard it here first.
It was great. It was so good. It was, I loved it. Best 2 minutes of my weekend by far. Except we haven't recorded yet. So now these are some 2 minutes in here might be the best 2 minutes.
So far. Yeah. Best 2 minutes.
So far.
Yeah.
So far.
I feel that.
All right. And with that, I'm Abby.
I'm Ronnie.
And this is Dragons in the Details. We are officially back, guys. We're so excited to be back. We hope you enjoyed our little re-release episodes. We hope you enjoyed our Crescent City reactions episodes. We are back on our deep dives. I am excited, but we'll keep going through the intro. So this is Dragons in the Details, the podcast that helps you better understand your favorite fantasy books. Oh, we threw in a new word there. Your favorite fantasy books through a series
it's always been there.
Of deep dive episodes. That's my bad. I'm bad at reading. Welcome to our Crescent City season. It is here. We are so excited. Guys, I have never prepped as much as I've prepped for these 2 episodes. I have 50 pages of notes all in. It's going to be fucking wild. Strap in. This is going to be a crazy season. We're very excited. Disclaimer before we jump in. This episode will contain, we're doing this a little differently this season. This episode will contain Crescent City and ACOTAR spoilers. So that is the full released books for both of them. If you're listening to this in the future, ACOTAR 6, 7, and 8 have not been released yet. So we're up through ACOTAR 5, Crescent City 1, 2, and 3. Why are we doing this way? 2 reasons. We have never heard of a single person who has read Crescent City who hasn't read ACOTAR. If you are that person, I'd like to hear about your experience.
I'd like to talk to you.
I want to know what's going on with you. I think you're probably very confused, but we welcome it. Second reason, we just wrapped our ACOTAR season. So most of you joining us have gone through ACOTAR with us. So if you are new, welcome. We so happy you're here. We're going to talk a lot about what we talked about in our ACOTAR season. This season too, there's obviously a lot of overlap. But if you ever want to go back and check out our ACOTAR episodes, those are streaming for your listening pleasure wherever you get your podcasts. So just to recap, spoilers for all 3 published Crescent City books. That is House of Earth and Blood, House of Sky and Breath, House of Flame and Shadow, all 5 published ACOTAR books. We are going to, at the end, have a full Massverse spoiler section. Obviously, the only thing we're missing now is Throne of Glass, but the same way we had in our ACOTAR season, we will have a little Massverse Throne of Glass section at the end. Sometimes that will be longer, sometimes that will be shorter. It'll depend on the topic. Second disclaimer, this podcast is rated R. Do not listen to it with your children, or do if you want to, but we're telling you that it's rated R. We curse. These are spicy books. Each week, we dive into a specific topic in depth to kick off this season for our first episode of this season, because we are fucking crazy. It's a wild move. I don't know what we were thinking. We are tackling arguably one of, if not the most important topics in this series, the Starborn Fae. All right, guys. So this is our Starborn Fae Deep Dive. The reason we did this is because we think this is like the cornerstone of this series. If you were with us in our ACOTAR season, you know what we're talking about. We're going to keep talking about it today. More evidence. We're actually focusing on this now. If you're new, buckle up. You're in for a fucking ride. I don't think you will have ever listened to a podcast episode like this before, but maybe you have. Either way, welcome. We come with receipts. It's kind of our thing. We have quotes to back up our theories, so you can follow along if you're skeptical. Ronnie, announcements.
Yes, as always, deep dive music brought to you by Schwoodley, SCHWOODLEY. Real music, real artists. Check them out on Spotify if you like our deep dive music. Also, we are shaking up our fun questions tradition from time to time. So send us your fun questions. We are answering fun questions from you guys. So send those in via Instagram, TikTok, or our contact form on our website. Those have been fun, super fun. And as always, if you listen on any platform and you do not subscribe in whatever format that platform supports, it would be great if you did. It means a lot to us. It helps us out. It helps us make great content for you guys. So would really appreciate it.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of requests for somehow more content. I don't know why you guys want to hear from us more. I feel like all we do is gab, but it's wonderful. And we would love to do that for you. Obviously, the more subscribers we have, the more kind of engagement we have, the easier it will be for us to do. So anywhere you listen to us, guys, it really helps. And we really appreciate it. All right, fun question. This one, as we talked about, these are now submitted by you guys because I was really bad at coming up with fun questions. Ronnie was pretty good at it, but I think we think you guys are a little better at it. This question this week. So this is from Sphinxy. The question is, would you rather have a night out? How topical, given our banter topic. Would you rather have a night out at Rita's, the White Raven, or the Yule Ball? If you guys don't know, the Yule Ball is from Harry Potter. So that one's not quite Massverse, but I think people know what the Yule Ball is.
I did not plan for this to be after we went out.
I didn't plan either.
However, after last night, I'm going to have to say a night out at Rita's. I think that's just my speed. I think that's where I'm at. I think night out at Rita's is the type of night for me. I think White Raven is a little bit too... And like Yule Ball is... I can't be in a full face.
It's a middle school ball. I'm not going to the Yule Ball.
I think it's like high school. Yeah.
Fourth
I guess
year?
like only half high school, half middle school.
But they all go. Like,
no, I think 18... below a certain age, you don't go. Right?
No, I think everyone went. I don't know. I haven't reread Harry Potter.
Young people had to be invited if they were going to be a date. I'm 99% sure. But yeah, anyways, it's for the youths. It's for the youths. Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. I think the White Raven is too much for me. I was going to say at this age, but honestly, probably at any age. I was never really into like clubs, the clue.
No, I would have gone to the White Raven at a different time in my life. I would have.
I don't know. Night out at Rita sounds fun. You're just kind of, I feel like it's more like a wine jazz bar situation that then like turns into like at midnight, it becomes a little bit of a dance hall for like more and stuff. But
yeah, you could go dancing, but you could also, I envision it as a place where you perhaps don't have to dance.
Yes.
If you don't want to.
Yes. Which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
All right.
Cool.
Great fun question. Thank you, Sphinxy, for submitting that.
Thank you, Sphinxy.
All right. Cosms from our last season. So if you guys are new, cosms are corrections, omissions, social media, shout outs. So this is sometimes we get things wrong. Sometimes we miss things. Sometimes you guys just have great shout outs and we want to give you credit for that. So I will start. So I posted a theory. We did our Asriel re-release deep dive. I mean, in the real world, we posted that on Thursday. Today's Sunday, so it's quite fresh. In your world, it was, I think, 2 weeks ago at this point. We posted our Asriel deep dive re-release about shadows. Remember, guys, ACOTAR spoilers are fair game here, so this is going to be mostly ACOTAR with a little Crescent City thrown in. We got a comment. A couple of people commented this, but I want to comment. I want to shout out the first person who commented it because it's like so obvious now, having gone back through Crescent City. I'm like, why didn't I think of this? But I think it's so great. So this was Midwest Aftermath on Instagram posted. It makes me wonder. Sorry, our Asriel theory was that his shadows come from hell. If you want to know more about that, you can listen to our ACOTAR season. Midwest Aftermath on Instagram posted, it makes me wonder if one of the princes came to Az when he was imprisoned as a child when he needed hope. And I was like, I love this idea. Like, I don't think we talked about this. Why didn't we think about this? But like, obviously the princes of hell come to hunt when he is imprisoned in a dungeon and talk to him. Could that have also happened with Asriel, with any of the princes of hell? Could even be the princes of hell we haven't met yet. And were his shadows gifted as a result of that? Because Rhys says that they don't know the origin of his shadows. They don't know if they came to him while he was in the dungeons, like they don't know where they came from. So I really love that idea. It seems very obvious now that someone has put it in front of me. So I think there's definitely merit to it. So shout out to Midwest Aftermath. We love it. Or I love it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I think one thing, and we'll obviously talk about this more throughout this season, is like one of my open questions is on Prithian's like findability, if you will. And whether the princes of hell can find it any more easily than the Asteri can, who obviously can't. Because I'm pretty sure when Thea, like as Celine explains how Thea explained it, it was like, well, because Adis and Thea were mates, they were able to open this portal to each other's worlds. Whereas we know that Midgard and Hell have this kind of like slivered rift kind of perpetually between them that Hell can slip through. So that is one of the things that I am like currently stewing on. But yeah, I mean, whether they were actually there or whether it was like dreamscape there or whatever, totally think it would make sense if the princes of hell visited.
I mean, the princes of hell being able to talk to people in dreams feels like it just completely opens up a totally new level to all of this. Like, what are the mechanics of that? Does it matter if the Northern Rift is open? Can they talk to anyone on any planet at any time? Like we'll explore.
What does this have to do with being Daimati? Yeah, I don't know.
We'll explore. I don't have the answers right now.
Good. It's good. I like it.
It's good. We love it.
I have an exciting one from YouTube, from CGS9787, who is, I believe, Carolyn. Hey, Carolyn. And this one I really liked, and a lot of you really liked it too. I think this has one of the highest engagement from other people who aren't, us on YouTube so far. And so this is what Carolyn wrote. Ronnie, Abby, and Dragons fans. I think I solved a mystery mentioned in this podcast, specifically the one of how Elaine just appears next to Hybern to save Cassian's life. This is very much ACOTAR. So sorry that it's all ACOTAR, but it's like that. It's that good. Like, I do want to read it because it's with Grayson's ring. Remember, it was such a plot point that Elaine wouldn't remove the engagement ring. Elaine was wearing the ring when she went into the cauldron. That's canon. Chapter 66, Akamath. Thank you for the receipt, Carolyn. We know that made items forged from the cauldron can support travel, so this is likely how Elaine did it. Amron suggests the magic in made items can respond to certain emotions. Page 244, A Court of Silver Flames. Elaine's iron band was designed to protect. Elaine sees Cassian's death, and her desire to protect activates the magic. I think Sarah J. Maas, out of a sense of irony, made the iron ring that's supposed to be useless into something powerful, which is symbolic of the character who wears it. Further to this, we assume Elaine doesn't want to give the ring back to Grayson because of her emotional devastation following the breakup. I think that's true initially, but after Grayson rejects her, I suspect she withholds it because she knows something is different about it and doesn't want it in the wrong hands. In the bonus chapter, Elaine returns the necklace she received from Azriel, thereby proving she's willing to make that type of gesture. So why keep the ring? Last week I posted about the bonus chapter necklace, so I'm clearly on a jewelry kick. Added note, I'm counting the references to Grayson's ring, and I've hit 6 so far in different novels. That suggests that even if we learn Elaine is more Starborn than she currently appears, and she did indeed wield Truth Teller, this ring is coming back. I think this is really fun because I hadn't even considered, like, yes, dipping metal things into the cauldron has made the trove. So
seemingly,
no matter, seemingly, yeah. So no matter what, I mean, Vespers said that. So, well, I shouldn't say Vespers hasn't lied to us. We don't know whether Vespers is telling the truth, but Vespers said that. So no matter what Elaine has done with this ring, I think it's not unfair to assume that this ring could have real capabilities. So whether it's Truth Teller or whether it was the ring, I think something very interesting might come about from this ring, whether it's how she appeared behind Hybern or not. I really like it.
I really like the theory. Yeah, I really like the idea of the ring being made. I like the idea of it coming back. I think, I don't have anything to add. I like it. We like it.
We like it.
All right. Are you ready for this deep dive, Ron? This is going to be a big one.
I'm kind of a bear. I'm going to try. We will try to prioritize and make it all make sense. We promise. I promise. I can't speak on behalf of Abby, but I promise.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about a lot of these questions. I think I have it pretty organized in my mind, but we will start. All right. Shall we deep dive?
Let's deep dive.
Okay. First question, Ronnie. We're starting real basic here. Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out.
This is a basic one, I think. This is just like, what are the fake facts?
First question. What are the Starborn Fae?
What are we told? Right?
What are we told that the Starborn Fae are?
So this is what we are told that the Starborn Fae are. So the Starborn Fae are a lineage of Fae with specific magical abilities, which we'll talk about in a different question, but we'll touch lightly on them here because they are pretty important in terms of designating who the Starborn are, who originated from the Dusk Court on Prythian, specifically originating from Queen Thea's line. And we learn this in a bunch of different ways, in a very roundabout way over like 1,800 pages or whatever it is. However, probably the most direct way that we learn it is from Rigelus, where he tells Bryce directly, your breed dwelled in a lovely verdant land rich with magic. If it's of any interest to you, your Starborn bloodline specifically hailed from a small isle a few miles from the mainland. And while the mainland had all manner of climes, the isle existed in a beautiful, near-permanent twilight. So your Starborn bloodline that Bryce has hailed from this isle that is Dusk. And we know that Dusk Isle to be the prison, what is now the prison island on Prythian. So let's talk a little bit about what's considered Starborn on Midgard, and then what Starborn is in terms of like kind of the grand scheme of things. Again, just what we're told. So to be considered Starborn on Midgard has a couple different flavors. The most basic one, like capital S Starborn, is basically you have to have enough of this bloodline to display Starlight and to wield the Star Sword. We'll talk about this more, but Queen Thea had a very specific flavor of Starlight. And while she passed on Starlight kind of genetically through her daughters, Selene and Helena, she also stored her Starlight in places, and her specific Starlight can crop up in her bloodline. The important thing here is that Bryce specifically has Thea's Starlight, and having Thea's Starlight seems to matter. Even though Ruhn is also Starborn, Bryce specifically has Thea's Starlight. Ruhn seemingly does not.
Well,
Ada says Ruhn does not. Real Ada says.
No, it's Rigelus.
Jezebel and Adis are talking later. You can tell the difference between Bryce's Starlight and her brother.
Oh, okay.
I shall never forget the exact shine and hue of Thea's light. It is still a song in my blood.
Yes. So, couple interesting. Yes, you are correct. Rigelus also says when he is disguised as Adis that Bryce and Ruhn do not have the same Starlight, which is interesting. And what Rigelus said, again, I can't remember if he's disguised as Adis, but Rigelus said, your Starborn line hails from this isle, right? Which implies to me there are other Starborn lines that like Bryce is one of them. Thea is one of them. They are not the only ones, though. It's going to be a big what the fuck Bucky Persian cat rune episode.
So we are told that Bryce has Thea's Starlight. She is called Starborn. Ruhn is also called Starborn. They both have Starlight. Ruhn obviously much less. Bryce has a lot. And they are both able to wield the Star Sword. The reason that Bryce having Thea's Starlight matters, and the fact that they can both pick up the Star Sword matters, is that, again, on Midgard, I'm talking like Starborn on Midgard, you are considered Starborn if you are picking up that Star Sword. Like, that's the test, right? You go into the Cave of Princes. Women aren't allowed, but like, whatever. Bryce obviously is the most Starborn here. And in order to wield that Star Sword, it's said that you need enough of Thea's Starlight, right? So we are told Thea endeavored to keep the Asteri from being able to wield her power to use the sword and the knife. Both weapons were keyed to her power thanks to Thea's assistance in their making, Adis explained calmly. It is why the Star Sword calls to the descendants of Helena, of Thea, but only to those with enough of Thea's starlight to trigger its power. Your ancestors called these Fae Starborn. The Asteri have no power over the blades, yada, yada, yada. We'll talk about that later.
Hold on. Let's put in a disclaimer. I think this is important. This is, specifically with this episode, this is our first episode of the season. All of our thoughts on this will evolve. And this topic in particular is so big, we could not possibly cover everything in this episode, right? So guys, if you're like, wait, you didn't talk about that, we will talk about it. Don't worry, we will. We just might not get to it this episode.
Yeah. So I'll just finish that sentence. The Asteri have no power over the blades. They lack Thea's connection to the weapons. Since the Star Sword and the knife were both made by Thea at the same moment, their bond has always linked them. They have long sought to be reunited. And that is from real Adis, actual Adis, not Rigelus.
Real Adis.
The Star Sword calls to Bryce, very obviously. So Bryce is very much Starborn in the capacity that Midgardian Fae are calling Starborn people Starborn. Ruhn can also pick up this Star Sword, was also called to its location in the Cave of Princes. What's going on with Ruhn's Starlight? Probably more in the Ruhn episode. We got a question later in this episode on that. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But Starborn, you've got the Starlight, you've got Thea's Starlight, you're picking up that Star Sword. At one point, it is believed, right, in this series that only the chosen one or the heir can do these things at any given time. But we learn and we know, right, that there were once multiple Starborn people at once, and there can be people with this light existing at the same time, right? So Thea had the light. She also shared that light with Selene and Helena, who were her daughters, and so they were all considered Starborn. Peleus was also said to be Starborn. He did not actually have Thea's light, right? That did not happen. So
yeah,
he's a fake Starborn.
Well, I do want to talk about this. I think this is really interesting, right? Because Adis says, the quote is, you just read this, but just for everyone's memory, it is why the Star Sword calls to the descendants of Helena of Thea, but only those with enough of Thea's Starlight to trigger its power. Your ancestors call these Fae Starborn, right? So you have to be a descendant of Thea to be considered Starborn on Midgard. There are two people who wield the Star Sword who cannot be descendants of Thea, I think. I mean, it'd be really gross if they were, and that is Fionn and Peleus, right? So we're told that Fionn takes the sword and has it, and Thea doesn't get it back until he dies, and then Peleus kills Thea with the Star Sword. So I don't quite know what's going on here, but they cannot be Starborn by that definition because they're not descended from Thea.
Totally. And maybe to clarify for everyone, Thea takes the sword from Fionn, right? So she steals it from him. So I don't know. I guess it's feasible that she could have keyed this power to her after she took it from him. Like she didn't murder him necessarily, but she did let him die very intentionally. It's basically... She would have been charged for murder in court. She would have been charged for murder in court. She didn't stab him, but she would have been charged.
Yeah.
And so I think in terms of that ordering, right, like they were wed. So I would assume that she is not, he is not descended from her line.
Exactly.
Right. So I think that one, we can I don't know what's going on there. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I assume that she did something after the fact, or this is just not true, and we will learn that at a later time. Peleus? No idea.
No idea. No idea.
No idea.
No idea.
Where did he get that power? I don't know.
We'll talk about it. We will talk about it. Not this episode.
Yeah, we will talk about it. Cool. Okay. There are also telltale physical traits of Starborn Fae, which Ruhn Dannon possesses, and it's kind of the Selene and Helena coloring, which is interesting, right? Because Thea does not have this coloring. Those references come up a few times across the series, and it's literally called Telltale Physical Heritage. No sign of the Star Sword tonight, and glancing at him beyond the telltale physical heritage of the Starborn line, Little declared, this is about Ruhn, that he'd been anointed by Luna or genetics to usher their people to greater heights. And then when he's marching into the summit, Ruhn, a step behind his father, was a shock to the senses. In his princely raiment, to the Star Sword at his side, he could have very well been one of the first Starborn with that coloring of his. So Ruhn, with his like midnight hair, again, very similar traits to Selene and Helena, and his very blue eyes, is said to be telltale physical traits of Starborn Fae. These are also exactly what Rhys looks like, right?
Exactly what Rhys looks like.
So we have Starborn on Midgard, which is Starlight, and you can pick up the Star Sword. But we also have these Starborn traits, and we'll talk about kind of the other gifts that typically are associated with Starborn. But it also seems to be like it's just the group of people that hail from Duskcourt and that like lineage and what those people look like. Because if those are the telltale physical traits, that's exactly what Rhys looks like. That's what his kind of whole line looks like. Selene is said to look exactly like Rhys's sister.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say I think there's a Starborn line, and that is the descendants of Dusk, right? I think that's definitely true. But then there are people who are Starborn who have the Starborn power. And the only people that are confirmed that we have in our entire Massverse based on that definition are Thea, Selene, Helena, Bryce, and Ruhn. Right. It's just those five. It's not Cormac. It's not Rhys. It's not the murder twins. It's not Morven. It's just those five people by the definition of both being descended from from Thea and having Starlight.
Right.
I don't know that we never see Selene or Helena wield the Star Sword, but we know that they have Starlight. I am assuming that they would be able to. But
they say they have the light. And even, I mean, yes, they say they have the light in the shadows. And Cormac says, like, I displayed Starborn gifts that made me think I would have enough to like get the Star Sword. So clearly they feel like they can draw correlations between these other gifts, winnowing, shadows, whatever, with Starlight. But yeah, he's not, by the Midgard definition, not considered Starborn. Neither is anybody except for Bryce and Ruhn on Midgard. And then, Selene, Helena, and Thea.
Yeah.
And I guess Peleus, technically, by Midgard definition, is considered Starborn.
We will talk about Peleus another time. I have so many questions about that man.
Yeah. And there are a bunch of Starborn princes who are dead that are called Starborn.
And we don't know anything about them.
We don't know anything about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Abby, what is Starfire?
So I just kind of generally answered what is their power. All right. So first thing, Starborn Fae have Starlight. Let's just talk briefly about what Starlight is, and then we'll get into Starfire. They are said to be able to summon the light of a star. So the quote for that, we have House of Earth and Blood, chapter 14. The first Starborn prince could blind an enemy with a flash of his starlight. You can barely summon a sparkle for an instant. So that is the Autumn King talking to Ruhn. This is about Peleus again, so I don't know if this is true, but basically this is what we are told. We are told, and we see Bryce do this as well, right? Basically, we are told that the Starborn line on Midgard, thus far, their power has been blinding people, right? And that's it. Just blinding people, just being able to summon starlight and its light, and that's it, right? So more quotes we have for that. The Starborn line had bred true twice. Ruhn's face drained of color as he remained kneeling and beheld his sister, the blazing gate, what she'd declared to the world, what she'd revealed herself to be. Bryce possessed the light of a star, such as hadn't been witnessed since the first wars. Jessica looked like she'd seen a ghost. Fury gaped at the screen. When the flare dimmed, Hunt's breath caught in his throat. So it's just the light of a star, right? That is what the Starborn power is believed to be. They're making a big fucking deal over light. Don't really know why this was seen as so important. It was basically just important to the Fae. Until Bryce goes to Prythian and claims the second third of Thea's star, right? At which point she has Starfire. Quote for that is, I'd say you had a third of Thea's power already, the part that originally was given to Helena. That came down to you through Helena's bloodline, and you took another third from where Selene stashed it. So when she just had the third through Helena's bloodline, she had light. Now that she takes Selene's, she can start to cut through things. I'll just continue reading. But if you can find the last third, the part that Thea originally kept for herself, I wonder how your light might appear then, what it might do. You knew Thea, Bryce said. You tell me. I believe you've already begun to see some glimpses of it, Adis said. Once you attained what Selene had hidden, Bryce considered. The laser power, Adis laughed. Thea called it Starfire, but yes, and that is House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 60. So basically, once she gets this second third of Thea's star, she is able to wield the light as a laser. I'm just going to keep going because I didn't answer this question correctly, but I think there's interesting things to talk about here. So basically, Starfire, at its most basic, you can wield the light as a laser. When Bryce gets the third part of Thea's star from Avalon, right? At that point, she can activate the power of the Truth Teller and the Star Sword. So quote we have for that is, Thea endeavored to keep the Asteri from being able to wield her power, to use the sword and the knife. Both weapons were key to her power, thanks to Thea's assistance in their making. You just read this. It is why the Star Sword calls to descendants of Thea, but only to those with enough of Thea's starlight to trigger its power. Your ancestors called these Fae Starborn. We just talked about this. That power is basically creating a black hole. Right. And we will do a whole nother episode on Truth Teller and Star Sword. Right. But once she has all three pieces of this star, of Thea's star, she can suddenly create a black hole when she reunites Star Sword and Truth Teller. So those are kind of the big three. We have piece one, which is just the light. We have piece two, which is Starfire. And then we have piece three, which all of a sudden she can create a black hole. That seems like a big jump, but obviously we have some magic blades kind of tossed in there. So those are like our big three Starborn powers. We have other auxiliary powers that are thrown in here as well that Cormac mentioned. I'll just run through them quickly. So we have shadows, right? The Starborn line has shadows. We see Selene, Helena, Ruhn, Cormac, the Murder Twins, and Rhys all have shadows. Thea and Bryce do not, but much of our Starborn line has shadows. We have mind speaking, right? / Daemati. So the quote we have for that is, Bryce said the Starborn could mind speak. We kind of have a question there, like, can they actually mind speak? Because Bryce herself doesn't seem to be able to mind speak, but we know that Rhys is a full Daemati. We know that Rhys is of the Starborn line. We haven't actually talked about this, but we know that Rhys is of the Starborn line because his blood is key to the prisons, and Selene said only her descendants' blood would be key to the prison. So Rhys is of the Starborn line. Selene seems to be a full Daemati. The quote we get for that is, my story begins before I was born. The female's voice was heavy, weary, tired, and sad. During a time I know of only from my mother's stories, my father's memories. She lifted a finger to the space between her brows. Both of them showed me once, mind to mind, so I shall show you. So we seem to have confirmation that Selene is a full Daemati. We know that Rhys is a full Daemati. The Murder Twins on Avalon are also full Daemati, even despite the parasite, right? Which is kind of crazy. So quotes we have for that are, when we're introduced to them, we get, but Ruhn, Flynn, and Declan glowered like they recognized the approaching males, both towering and armed to the teeth. They were clearly twins. The Murder Twins Ruhn had mentioned, capable of prying into minds as they saw fit. So they can fully read minds, even though Ruhn can't. And they later control Sathia's body, which is that's what Rhys does to Feyre under the mountain, right? So one heartbeat, Sathia was wide-eyed and monitoring the showdown. The next, she'd snatched a knife from Therian's side and held it against her own throat. Stop it, Therian snarled towards the twins, who were snickering. Sathia's hand shook, and she pressed the dagger into her neck a little harder, drawing a trickle of blood. So they are forcing her to hold a knife to her own throat. So we seem to have a lot of Daemati in our Starborn lineage, but not everyone.
Bryce at one point, and again, like Sarah does this a lot, she will hide shit in sex scenes to distract you. That's the thing that she does. At one point, she is saying things, and we get the classic, she must have voiced her thoughts aloud because blank.
It is possible Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if once she has more time without the parasite that she finds that she does have like some mind speaking.
I definitely think that's possible, but I think that Thea was not a Daemati, and we'll get into that in a later question.
I agree.
So it's very interesting, right? So
but Selene certainly was. Yeah.
Selene certainly was. Helena, probably, not definitely. And then Ruhn obviously can mind speak, but cannot mind read. That might be because of the parasite. Might be he doesn't have it. We don't fully know. Cormac definitely wasn't Daemati, even though he's of the Starborn line. Maybe.
No. He, I don't know about Cormac, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's completely possible, but I don't think he would have sought out Ruhn if he were, because that was the whole.
Yeah, exactly.
Point.
Exactly.
But on Helena, when they're in the tunnels in Avalon, Bryce says, and again, this is why the definition of Starborn on Midgard pisses me off, but Bryce says, the Starborn could mind speak, still can. And she nodded up toward the river a level above with the murder twins lurking somewhere on its other side. Maybe the salt helped her mind speak with hell. Maybe someone in hell can tell us how to kill the Asteri. Apollyon himself ate serious. Maybe he's had the answer all along. And that was Helena. Like Helena was in those tunnels. So maybe it was, I mean, we know that the princes of hell just like do this and they kind of just speak to you in your mind, but it's seeming like it's possible that Helena had this ability as well.
I actually have the exact same quotes. I said though, I have the exact same quotes, but then Bryce is able to mind speak with hell the same way, and I wouldn't characterize Bryce as Daemati. So I think it's an open question.
Yeah.
I look forward to this. I think it's going to be fun. Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe Bryce is Daemati, but definitely Daemati is kind of an auxiliary power of this Starborn line. We also have winnowing, right? So obviously Bryce and Cormac can winnow. She calls it teleporting, but it's winnowing. We get confirmation when she goes to Prythian and they say, we call it winnowing. At one point, Bryce says, you can call it whatever you want. And I wrote in a comment, this is before she goes to Prythian, I want to call it winnowing. So, we're good. Amryn confirmed it. Thea could also winnow, we think. This is in House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 21. We get the quote, the very enemies my mother had slaughtered and enslaved, she now needed. Their final stronghold lay at Parthos, where all scholars and thinkers of their day had holed up in the great library. And so it was to Parthos we went next, winnowing under the cover of darkness. This is about Selene, Helena, and Thea all winnowing to Parthos. Not completely clear which one of them is doing this, but I think it was Thea based on things that happened later in the First Wars, but at least one of them was winnowing. So it is something to do with the Starborn line, I think we can assume. But then obviously, of course, Ruhn can't winnow, and we get no indication that the murder twins can winnow. But we have Bryce, Cormac, and Rhys being able to winnow. And then the last one is healing. I'm not 100% sure that this is a Starborn power. When Ruhn takes the antidote, he suddenly has healing power. So the quote for that is, warm, bright magic answered, healing magic rising to the surface as if it had been dormant in his blood. He had no idea how to use it, how to do anything other than will it with a simple save him. An answer light poured from his hands, and he could feel Tharion's flesh and bone knitting back together beneath his fingers, mending, healing. So that is House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 94. Bryce, obviously, when she makes her drop, the first light that she kind of generates that is released from her drop at the gate heals everybody in the city for the most part. So I think it's kind of unclear if that was first light or if that was her power somehow healing everyone. I'm totally willing to buy that was first light. But Ruhn definitely has this healing ability. Whether that's related to his Starborn heritage, I don't know. But it's light and it's healing, so I don't know. I think that's one. That's a potential one. We'll put it in the potential category. Anything I missed? I realized we were just supposed to talk about Starfire, so I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, I did all of it later. But I agree. I mean, I think on healing, like, it's one that we see in the Night Court in Prythian. So regardless of whether it's a, quote, Starborn ability, or whether it's just from the fact that their lineage is from Prythian, I think either way, like, yes, the answer is yes to that. A couple other things on Starlight. So we talked about Starlight in general and Starfire. The Starlight is just light, but it does react to things, right? Like it is said to be by Rigelus, and then it kind of does this, like it proves it out right underneath the hewn city and the prison, said to be like a beacon for the homeworld of the Fae, and also for Bryce's quote champions, like whoever that may be. So it kind of shines for Cormac, it shines for Hunt, it shines for anybody that seems to be that has Bryce's interests at heart. How that works, don't fucking know. But it does prove to be true. When Bryce is under the hewn city in Hofast chapter 5, Bryce turned towards one of the tunnels, trying to better see what lay beyond. The star in her chest dimmed, like her magic was rapidly fading. She whirled toward the other tunnel, trying to see what she could before the magic vanished. The star flared brightly again. Huh, she murmured. Bryce turned back the other way. The star faded. To the opposite side, it brightened. So is it because she's facing a core of first light and then away from it? I don't know. But it does seem to be like very much a beacon of some sort toward the Starborn world, like the Starborn stronghold, and does react to Hunt, Cormac, the beasts in the pit, that sort of thing. She can also like do weird things with it before she claims the second third of light. Like she can ball up starlight and like throw it places and stuff like that, even before she has
really
I don't
remember. I remember her taking it out of her chest, but I don't remember her like throwing it.
Hofast chapter 5. Bryce willed starlight to her hand and held it up. Nothing but emptiness waited below. Bryce fisted her palm, balling the starlight into an orb, and dropped it down.
Yeah.
And then like
you're right.
Like, look at stuff. Yeah. I don't know. So it does have like interesting, I don't know. It's more than just like light flaring out of her chest. And she probably could have found more uses from it if she had only had that for longer. Which maybe is what the Starborn princes or like whoever had the starlight before her was doing with it, because they clearly had nothing else. Yeah, I think that was the only thing on Starlight. Oh, and for Starfire, I mean, I think the only thing additional that I had was that we're told specifically that the darkness is what gives it shape into Starfire, right? Specifically, the darkness of the dusk power, we're told, the darkness of Celine's - Thea's dusk power, giving it shape, transforming it into that Starfire. So yes, it is the second third of Thea's power that gives her this Starfire ability, but also that is the part of the power that gives her this shadow inside her starlight as well. And that is what, for some reason, is able to give her Starfire, which is interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to do a slight aside here because Derek and I were talking yesterday. This was actually wild. And he was like, oh, yeah, so I watched this YouTube video today with Neil deGrasse Tyson where he was talking about matter and antimatter and what happened when if matter and antimatter collide and then what happens from that. And I said, you need to send me that YouTube video right fucking now. Yeah. I need to watch that.
Yeah.
All of which is to say, I do think we'll get into that. We're going to dive into the prism thing, whatever's happening there, I think at length in a different episode. But yes, it does seem interesting to me. It's not only that Thea like divided her star, right? It's like she gave specific pieces, like the three pieces of the star are not the same, it seems like, right? Like Celine's was darker for whatever reason. Celine's part of her star was darker. We don't know what her starlight looks like now that she's got Helena's piece of it. I hope we find out.
Yeah.
But I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean Thea's piece of it, right?
Yeah. She inherited Thea's Helena. Piece that,
that Helena like hid and stashed in Avalon.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Matter and antimatter. The Autumn King was the only person who was telling Bryce the truth the entire time, and we fucking lost him. I'm mad about it.
She really shouldn't have killed him. Like, that man had some fucking answers.
Ruhn, you gotta cool it for 5 seconds, man.
Oh yeah, Ruhn did kill him. I forgot about it.
Yeah. I also just want to, like, this is not, we're not going to answer this now, but I'm just going to say it. For some reason, Daemati powers work outside of Gorsian shackles. What is Gorsian stone made of that Daemati power is just like, don't care.
Yeah, but his so what Ronnie is referencing is that in the dungeon when Ruhn is being tortured, his mind speaking works. Like he's still able to talk to Lydia. Lydia could talk to him, but his shadows don't. And they seem to have the same source of their power, which is this Starborn line. So why is one blocked and the other isn't? I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, and that's Hofast. She knew he could communicate even with the Gorsian stones, halting his magic and slowing his healing. Knew he'd done so with his sister before Bryce had escaped.
Pieced out. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Okay. I will have more to talk about on the other stuff later because we have a question about it, but I'm good for now, if you are good.
Okay. Okay. All right. So this is probably our big question. This is probably the meat of the episode we're getting into here. Strap in. Ronnie, what do we think? And we can think different things. It's okay if we think different things. What do we think the Starborn Fae actually are? And if you're new here, welcome. This is when it's going to get a little crazy.
Okay. So the Starborn Fae do, in fact, in this case, seem to originate from Thea. That's pretty much where I think the honesty ends. But we have, and this will not be new to, I think, most listeners who have come to with us from ACOTAR. Thea seems to have gotten her power from Vesperus, most likely genetically. And here's a quick recap of why we think that, plus some more compounding evidence. I think we'll both have more compounding evidence. And then I have a slight deviation, or not deviation, but like sidebar. Yeah. Vesperus speaks about Thea with intense familiarity, right? Says she allowed Thea to convince her to lay down to rest, that she raised her from childhood, right? So this is all in House of Flame and Shadow, chapters 24 and 25-ish. For a heartbeat, it was the creatures, Vesperus's, turn to blink. As if a memory had cleared, she said more to herself than them. Thea was so charming that day. Told me I looked tired and to replenish myself in the crystal here above the well. But she sealed me within instead to let me starve to death over the eons. Weird thing to do, to just take like a suggestion from a fae if you did not, trust them implicitly. And she also says, it would have been a mercy to kill me. Thea did not understand the word. I raised her from childhood not to. Why are you raising a fae from childhood? We know nothing about Thea's parents. We know nothing about Thea's parents.
Yeah.
Vesperus claims to be the evening star. This is important.
It's very important.
It's also important that there's two evening stars, but we'll talk about that, I think, in a different episode. But Vesperus claims to be the evening star. She says, you may call me Vesperus. The creature's eyes glowed with irritation. Are you related to Hesperus? Bryce arched a brow at the name, so similar to one of Midgard's Asteri. The evening star? I am the evening star, Vesperus seethed. So she says she's the evening star. Thea's children look exactly like Vesperus. Vesperus has moon white skin, impossibly dark hair, crushing blue eyes, and Selene and Helena are both pale, night-haired, and have those blue eyes as well. And those are the classic Starborn traits, right? Those telltale traits that we talked about in the first question. Those are Vesperus's traits. That's exactly what she looks like. And then again, back to the evening star being important. Selene says that her son glowed with the light of the evening star and says that it came from her. And the evening star is Vesperus's power, right? And that is again from Hofast. Yet when my first son was born, when the babe screamed and the sound was full of night, I brought him to the prison and keyed the wards into his blood. No one knew that the infant who sometimes glowed with starlight had inherited it from me, that it was the light of the evening star, the dusk star. So that is like Selene's child is Vesperus's descendant. Selene is Vesperus's descendant, and therefore Thea needs to be Vesperus's descendant as well.
I think they definitely have the same power. I just want to play a little devil's advocate. I think what we can say from that sentence is that they absolutely have the same power, right? It is the light of the evening star. And what Sarah does so fucking brilliantly here is we get Selene's entire monologue. Right. And she says, no one knew it would be the starlight he inherited from me, that it was the light of the evening star, the dusk star. We have not met Vesperus yet. Right. Vesperus has not said, I am the evening star. So we haven't put it together. There has been no reason to put it together yet until you go back and you say, oh, holy shit, it's the evening star. So they all have the same starlight. No question. There is no question about that.
Yes. They all have the same power. And it is also, I think, just to be fair, two devil's advocate things. The common denominator is the power of the land, right? It is not
absolutely
Vesperus, and it is not the Fae. It is the land. Vesper says, I drank the land's magic and the land's magic drank from me. And Thea also gets her magic. Like her magic is the land's magic. And that is what is so special about Prythian as well, is like the land is ripe with magic. And that's a theme that we're seeing in these books too, right? Like Avallen's earth magic is released. So is it completely possible that this is not actually magic from Asteri? It is magic of the land that the Asteri are drinking and that Thea is somehow also drinking? Totally. But I think the question is, how are they both drinking this power? Like, how are they both absorbing this power? Which brings us to the compounding evidence, which is like, Bryce needs to be charged up, just like the Asteri. She needs her reserves restored, right? So Hunt is her battery. Azriel can also charge her. Any power really can charge her, but certain power is better than others. Hypaxia can charge her. She gets her power from the first light in the gates. That's how she makes the drop, which is basically 1 million tithes, right? It's people in the gates of Lunathian, just for context, in case this is like a pretty minor detail. I didn't remember it until I wrote it down, but like everybody drops power into these gates like wishes on a wishing well. And that is how the gates have this power. And when Bryce makes the drop, she puts her hands on the gates and claims all of that first light from the gates. So the massive amount of power that she claimed is actually the first light of like probably millions of citizens of Lunathian giving their first light over crazy amounts of time. Starborn Fae can wield Asteri-made items like the Trove just as easily as the Asteri can. I would argue that Bryce can wield the mask even more easily than Nesta can. Like Nesta needs to be coerced to take it off. Bryce is just like, I'm good. Like I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And of course, she can wield the horn as well. The Starfire is comically similar to Rigelus's destructive power that he's blasting at Bryce as she is running out of the Eternal City and into Prythian. So there is a lot of, outside of just the Evening Star evidence, which again, I do not personally think is the nail in the coffin, because I think the common denominator is the land. Yeah. There are the similarities of Bryce needing power to use power, I think, is the link to the Asteri. Do you have anything to add? I'm sure you do. To the Asteri. I have so much. Link.
I have so much. I have about 15 reasons why this works, and I have like 3 that don't. So I'll try to go through them quickly. I think we've covered the Evening Star thing. It is the idea that Thea, Celene's son, and Bryce, when Bryce claims her power for her second third of Thea's star, she says, power, uncut and ancient, scorched through her veins. The hair on her head rose, debris floated upward. She was everywhere and nowhere. She was the evening star and the last rays of color before dark, right? So now Bryce has that evening star in her as well, right? So we have Vesperus, Thea, Bryce, Celene's son, all of them, this power of the evening star, which almost certainly comes from the land of Prythian. So it's exactly what you said. It's that ability to absorb this power is what seems to be common between the Asteri and the Starborn line.
Sorry, one more devil's advocate point. I think you've already disproven this, but we do have an item that can transfer power from one person to the other. So even if, again, the genetics, like the genetic links are there, but the harp can move power from one person to the other. So Thea could, in theory, have stolen this. Yeah. It is possible.
It might not be genetic, but it is certainly
raised from childhood. I don't know.
It is certainly Asteri-esque. So let's talk about the ability for Bryce to amplify her power with other people's magic, right? We know the Asteri, this is the Asteri playbook, right? The Asteri do not have any power of their own. What they do is they absorb magic from other people, and that makes them stronger, which is when Azriel charges Bryce up, he's like, are you sure? I'm about to hit you with my raw power, which to a non-Starborn person would injure them, possibly kill them, right? She's like, yeah, just hit me on my chest, and she can absorb that power, right? So we have like, that is the same as the Asteri, right? We later see Vesperus do the exact same thing to wield the Star Sword. Azriel hits her with his power, and she takes it and she uses it to wrap her hands around the Star Sword, right? So same idea of that power absorption. We have a couple quotes here, which in my mind make it like the links are so strong. So we talked about her drop. Bryce absorbs all of that power in her drop, and it amplifies her non-existent power, right? So Bryce had no power until she absorbed power from people, until she absorbed First Light from people, exactly the same as the Asteri, right? So the quotes for that are, Declan squinted at the screen. She's gaining speed. He shook his head, but she's classified as low level, near negligible if he felt like being a dick about it, right? So Bryce has no power until she absorbs it. And then we get Declan's breathing was uneven as he murmured, the power of the gates, the power given over by every soul who has ever touched it, every soul who has handed over a drop of their magic. He tried and failed to calculate just how many people over how many centuries had touched the gates in the city, had handed over a drop of their power like a coin tossed in a fountain, made a wish on that drop of yielded power, right? So then she's able to be super mega charged up, basically, right? Like she is able to wield all of this power. The gates of the crystal are a conduit. She is absorbing the power from the gates. We see the Asteri sit on crystal thrones in the crystal palace to absorb First Light, right? No one else can do this. Only the Starborn Fae and the Asteri can do this, right? That is like an undeniable fact about this, right? All right. So Declan also says she's literally a gate herself. The quote we have for that is, so your magic beyond the light, needs to be powered up. It relies on First Light or any other form of energy you can get. You're literally a gate. You can take in power and offer it, but it seems the similarity ends there. The gates can store power indefinitely while yours clearly peters out after a while. Even after Bryce gets her third piece of Thea's star, Hunt still needs to charge her up in the final battle. He does it a couple times, and he does it for opening the Northern Rift. So it is not like, oh, she only had 2/3 of her power. Even when she has all of it, she continues to need to be charged up, just like the Asteri. So we have quotes where she uses the exact same language to describe herself and to describe the Asteri. So what Bryce says is, I need a charge like a battery, Bryce said, the scar on her chest growing faintly. That's Sky and Breath chapter 55. Bryce had no weapons, nothing beyond the magic in her veins, the Archesian amulet around her neck, and the horn tattooed in her back. But to wield it, she needed some power, needed to be fueled up like some stupid fucking battery. That's Flame and Shadow chapter 1. And then I'm pretty sure the concept of a battery won't have much meaning here, but yeah, my magic can be amplified by someone else's power. The other untranslatable word battery lay heavy on her tongue. So she's called herself a battery 3 times. She calls the Asteri a battery, right? So this area was 7 levels below in the throne room where the Asteri sat on crystal thrones. Did those thrones fill them with power? In plain sight, they fueled up like batteries, sucking in this First Light. Same thing. Right. And then she also calls both herself and the Asteri a leech. So she says for the Asteri, she says, with this, what Danica had learned in her studies on Bloodlines, that they'd all come from elsewhere, but had been lured and trapped here and then fed on by these immortal leeches. So that's about the Asteri. And then about herself, Bryce, when she's talking to Declan, he says, Bryce, when you draw from a source, it's the same way. The gates zap power from people using them to communicate. Bryce blinked. So I'm like some magical leech. So we have leech, we have battery, right? Yeah. The charging up process also looks exactly the same for Bryce and Vesperus. So for Bryce, we have Hunt screamed as Bryce leapt in front of his power as his lightning hit the black blade, exploding from the metal, flowing into her arms, her body, her heart, light flash, blinding. No, that was Bryce. For Vesperus, same language. Light shot up the Asteri's legs into her body, a blinding flash, and then. It's like copy and paste, same 2 sentences, right? Vesperus confirms that Thea could have also charged herself up, but Vesperus never taught her how to do it. Because Vesperus knows how to do it, right? Because it's the same power. So the quote is, Thea had the gift, Vesperus said, but did not understand how to claim the light. That's what Bryce is doing here, right? She's claiming additional light. I made sure never to reveal how during her training, how she might light up entire worlds if she wished, if she seized the power to amplify her own. But you, light stealer, she must have passed the gift down to you, and it seems you have learned what she had not. So Vesperus has just told Bryce that they hid pockets of their light, of their power throughout the land, but she never taught Thea how to claim it. But Bryce knows how to claim it because it's the same thing. Okay. You mentioned the trove. I just want to get into this a little more because the quotes are actually crazy. Not only can she wield the trove, it speaks to some part of her magic. So Vesperus tells us the Asteri made the trove, right? That is confirmed. We have that quote. She says, those of us who ventured here found ways to amplify that power thanks to the gifts of the land. We pooled our power and imbued those gifts into the cauldron so that it would work our will. We made the trove from it. The Asteri made the trove. Sarah does something really interesting here, which I think not a lot of people have picked up on. When we learn about the horn, we are told the horn at first is imbued with starborn power, right? So the quotes we have for that is, the shadows veiling them rippled because Prince Peleus's starborn power was woven into the horn itself, and it's in my blood. My father thinks I might have some sort of preternatural gift to find it, he admitted. When I was browsing the archives last night, this book just jumped out at me. So we're being told starborn power is woven into the horn, and then we later learn the Asteri made the horn, right? It mentions here that the sacred objects were made only for Fae like them, that the horn worked only when that starlight flowed through it, when it was filled with power. This claims that the starborn magic, in addition to a bunch of other crap, can be channeled through the sacred objects, bringing them to life. But the Asteri made it, so it's Asteri magic. It's not starborn magic. It is the same magic, right? And then with the mask, I think this is probably like the craziest one. The star inside her flared brightly as if to say, hello, old friend. Yes, the ancient magic knew the mask. It understood its deepest secrets, right? It's her magic is saying, old friend, you are me and I am you, right? Like this is like calls to like, basically, right?
Yeah.
She also is able to overrule its pull towards an Asteri. So this is at the end of Starlight, Flame and Shadow. We have dead and undead, Rigelus' nature confused the mask, alive and not alive, breathing and not breathing. We'll get into that at another time, not right now. It couldn't get a grip on the bright hand, and it seemed to be recoiling, pulling away from Bryce. She focused. You obey me. The mask halted and remained in her thrall. So Rigelus is an Asteri, literally trying to pull an Asteri-made item away from Bryce, and Bryce, with her starborn power, is able to say, no, you belong to me, right? So those are probably the big three, and then I have a lot of like supporting evidence for why this works. Do you want to, I think you're about to get into the shadows and everything. Should I keep going with the ties to the Asteri?
I'm about to get into shadows. I have one more on like the Asteri. I mean, just the number of times that Bryce herself questions, like, am I like the Asteri? And the number of times that people don't give good reasons that she is not like the Asteri. Like,
yes.
I think the biggest one is Starfire. Like She's like, is it the same as the Asteris? And Apollyon says, no, they're similar in their ability to destroy, but the Asteri's power is a blunt, wicked tool of destruction. Adis added, eyes shining with sympathy. Why would he feel bad?
Why would he feel bad?
Right. if the answer weren't yes? Starfire's ability to destroy is but one facet of a wondrous gift. The greatest difference, of course, lies in how the bearer chooses to use it. So yes, Starfire does have the ability to destroy because it is the same power, and the Asteri don't use it for these other things, but you could, and they are the same, and Adis feels bad because
So I do want to be clear, there are a couple reasons why this doesn't work. I'm going to get into all the other reasons why it does work that I've been able to find thus far, because I think this is a really important argument to make, and then we'll talk about why it doesn't. And then we'll get to the shadows, because the shadows are very important. Okay. All right. We talked about this in ACOTAR. Bryce has Vesperus's crown of stars. Okay. So the quote for that is, we see a portrait of Vesperus in the caves under the prison. The quote is, the hand that had claimed the power lifted, and Bryce stilled as the memory zoomed out to reveal the hand's bearer, a black-haired, white-skinned Asteri. There was no mistaking the cold, otherworldly eyes. She lounged in golden robes, a crown of stars upon her head. We later meet Vesperus. She has black hair, pale skin. She's wearing golden robes. It is the same Asteri. This is a portrait of Vesperus, right? Hunt sees Bryce wearing a crown of stars twice in Hofas, in Avalon. Her chin lifted, and he could have sworn a crown of stars glimmered around her head. I want to wipe them off the face of the planet, she said, and though her voice was soft, but pure predatory rage filled it. That's chapter 65. And then We have, sorry, I don't know what chapter that is. I don't think it's 65. We have, I promised myself that day Micah cut off your wings. Bryce said, still just for him, that they'd pay for it, for what they've done. Starlight flickered around her head in a shadow of that crown of stars. So we have Bryce wearing an Asteri's crown of stars. Could be because they both have claimed the power of the evening star. Could be a genetic link, right? The Daglin hounds, you mentioned this before, bow to her. All right, so quick recap on how we know these are Daglin hounds. So the description we have in Hofas, a writhing sea of black scaled bodies silvered by her light appeared. We get confirmation that these are the beasts of the Asteri in Celine's carving. So the quote is, a field of corpses had been carved into the wall, a battlefield stretching ahead. Crucifixes loomed over the battlefield, bodies hanging from them. Great dark beasts of scales and talons, the ones from beneath the pit of her cell, she realized with a shudder, feasted on screaming victims. So Bryce literally encounters, we call them Daglin's hounds because that's what they call them in ACOTAR. Bryce literally encounters a pit of Daglin hounds. And then you talked about this before, but we have, she rallied her power, but nothing, only enough to keep the star glowing on her chest, no teleporting then. And the floor of the pit was covered with these things, all smelling her, assessing her, but not advancing. Like something about them about her gave them pause, maybe it also meant something to these creatures. Blah, blah, blah. The star kept glowing, pointing the way. The creatures settled as if her emotions were theirs. She willed herself to calm, to feel no fear. The creatures settled further. Some laid their heads down. She glanced at the star in her chest, still glowing brightly. They are your champions too, it seemed to say. The Asteri hounds are her champions. Because she has that seems pretty self-evident, right? Like she is their master. They are recognizing her as their master. And then later it literally says they lay before her like obedient dogs. She didn't question it. Whenever Sarah puts in she didn't question it, that means you're supposed to question it. You're supposed to wonder, why are these Asteri hounds bowing to Bryce's Starlight?
Yeah.
She calls herself maid. I don't know that we need to go into this one too much, but made things mean that they were made by the Asteri. So we talked about this a lot in our ACOTAR season. Nesta and Elaine are made because they went into the cauldron with Asteri corrupted power. Quote, we pooled our power and imbued those gifts into the cauldron so that it would work our will. We made, capital M, the tro from it. Bryce later calls her power made. So what she says, this is when her and Hunt exchange powers during sex. She says, it felt like my power went into you, Hunt said, eyes tracking the lightning as it slithered down her body. It's yours, and mine is yours, she said, touching a fleck of starlight glittering between the sable locks of his hair. I feel weird, he admitted, but didn't move. I feel. She sensed it then, understood it at last, what it had always been, what she'd learned to call it in that other world. Made, with a capital M, right? So she says, Hunt is saying, I have your power, I feel weird. She's saying, you feel made. Other things, and I really love some of these. So Vespera says, there are certain places, girl, that are better suited to hold power than others, places where the veil between worlds is thin and magic naturally abounds. Our light thrives in such environments, sustained by the regenerative magic of the land. She gestured around them. This island is a thin place. The mists declare it so, right? So Vespers is saying there are places where Asteri power is hidden better than others. Those are thin places, which is exactly where Thea's power is also hidden, right? So if it works for the Asteri, it works for the Starlight power. This is probably actually my favorite one. And this gets back into the idea that they are actually Vesper's offspring and not just made. So the quote we have, this is again from Celine. My father became high king and my mother his queen, yet this island on which you stand, this place, my mother claimed it for herself. The very island where she had once served as a slave became her domain, her sanctuary. The Daglin female who'd ruled it before her had chosen it for its natural defensive location, the mists that kept it veiled from others. So Vespers was up to something. Vespers was doing something that she was trying to keep from the other Asteri, and she specifically chose the prison so that the other Asteri wouldn't look into it. What is she hiding? I think she's hiding that she created the Starborn Fae somehow. I don't know how. Again, I think it's genetic. Doesn't have to be genetic necessarily. Yeah. Other things, we know that the Asteri still have secrets. The reason we know that is in Celine's TED Talk. We get, they fought the Daglin and won. She went on, using the Daglin's own weapons, they destroyed them. Yet my parents did not think to learn the Daglin's other secrets. They were too weary, too eager to leave the past behind them. So there's still things we haven't learned yet. I think you think that this might be some of them. So that's a brief list of all the reasons why this theory works. We have a couple things that are working strongly against this theory, though, and I do want to acknowledge them. Ruhn says, so if we are going with the theory that Thea is Vesper's daughter, which is still my preferred method of this happening because it's Starborn, right? It's Starborn. Yeah. It's not Star-made. It's Starborn.
Yeah.
Ruhn says Ruhn is trying to figure out what Day's identity is, and she mentions her family. And Ruhn says she wasn't an Asteri then. Asteri had no family, no children, no parents. They just were. That is Sky and Breath chapter 36. So we have a quote that says Asteri have no children. Would Ruhn know? Can we trust this? Would Ruhn know this?
Yeah,
I don't know.
All the time, so
this book is filled with lies.
Yeah.
You mentioned before, Apollyon says it's not the same power. I think we covered that. I don't think we need to go over it again. That seems like a really sketchy non-answer to me. Vesper's not being able to touch the Star Sword, I do think is really interesting. I don't think it necessarily negates this theory. But the fact that Vesper's can't touch the Star Sword when it seems that Thea and Vesper's had the same power, definitely interesting. Definitely something we will talk about in more detail. Maybe it does disprove this theory. I don't know. The last one, and this is a big one. The Asteri, at least the Asteri on Midgard, are said to not actually have stars in them at all, right? So the quote for that is, this is when Bryce and Ritas are floating into space. She says, like the battery she was, she grabbed his power, sucked it into herself. Light met light, and yet Ritas' starlight wasn't starlight at all. It was power, yes, but it was first light. It was the power of Midgard, of the people. It flowed into her, so much power that it nearly knocked the breath out of her lungs. Time slowed further, and still she sees more of Ritas' power. His power indicator on the wall plummeted. Ritas reeled back, releasing her either in pain or rage or fear. She didn't know. Without the first light, without the people of Midgard and every other planet, they'd bled dry. Without the power of the people, these Asteri fuckers were nothing. So it's not stars. Kind of. On Midgard, it's not stars. Also, by the way, right before this, Ritas has literally also grabbed a different Asteri and sucked the power out of them, and now Bryce is doing it to him. Again, seems very similar. I think there is far too much evidence that these are the same powers for it to be a coincidence. I think if it were a coincidence, that would be really fucking crazy. You mentioned this before. This power seems to basically be the ability to absorb power from other sources at its most basic form. In Prythian, that is a star. In Prythian, that is the evening star. There might be other stars, but basically in Prythian, it seems like Vesper's is able to absorb a star, and it seems like Thea and Thea's line is able to absorb a star. But in Midgard, it doesn't seem like there is any star. And Bryce is the only one who can absorb a star on Midgard because she is descended from Thea, and Thea's third of her star has been left on Avallen. Have a big theory here. I think basically what Vesper's was trying to do, and I will say this is kind of precog. I don't have a ton for this one now. I think Vesper's made Thea, either genetically or magically, with the purpose of creating the perfect battery for herself to charge herself up, right? I don't think, even if this is genetic, I don't think this was like a love child. I think this was the purpose of this was to give the Asteri a better connection to the land of Prythian, basically as a straw, right? So, yeah, the quotes we have for this is, we have Apollyon telling Bryce that both her and Hunt are conduits. So the quote is, both of you would benefit from training. Your powers are more similar than you realize. Conduits, both of you. You have no idea how valuable you and the others like you are. That is Sky and Breath, chapter 21. Both of them can, which we'll get into later, is also interesting. Both of them can both absorb and give power. Vesper says, once we left our homeworld, our powers began to dim. Too late, we realized that we had been dependent on our land's inherent magic. The magic in other worlds was not potent enough, yet we could not find the way back home. Those of us who ventured here found ways to amplify that power thanks to the gift of the land, right? Mm-hmm. So when they leave their homeworld, they are not connected to their pure magic source anymore. Right. But we know the land on Prythian is rife with magic. Yeah. But they can't access it very well. Right. Like she says, our powers began to dim. So what if she created the Starborn Fae
to basically have someone be that conduit, right? They are better able to absorb the power of the land because it is their home planet, basically. And then they also have, so they can absorb that power, but then they can pass it on to the Asteri to be basically like a conduit for the Asteri to actually be able to better absorb the land from Prythian. That's what I think Vesperus was up to. Very loose, very loosey-goosey. Basically, Thea can absorb the power of the land. Thea's descendants can absorb the power of the land. In Prythian, that's a star. In Midgard, it's not a star. It's first light, right? It's the power of the people. And then the Asteri have an infinite battery pack, basically, right? Like she can just keep taking, is my current thought. That was a lot of words.
I think Thea being a straw makes sense, I guess, assuming that she is also, like cyclical with the land, and assuming that Vesperus truly is like materially less efficient, right? And that the I drank the land's magic and the land's magic drank from me quote from Vesperus is it's worse, right? Like whatever she's doing in that cycle is worse than what Thea is able to do. Yeah.
Well, I think that actually makes sense, even with Thea being a conduit in that case, right? Because when Vesperus leaves, Vesperus says she never taught Thea how to claim extra power, right? So Thea was always just kind of claiming the right amount of power from the land, I guess.
Yeah.
And then when Vesperus actually never leaves, what am I talking about? When she puts Vesperus in the coffin, the land is kind of able to regenerate and come back, which makes sense in my mind.
Yeah.
So even though Thea still has the power of the evening star, it's not being like sucked out of the land. It's more regenerative. It's more cyclical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. You want to talk about the shadows?
Yeah, it's half about shadows, half about starlight. So you read the quote already, so I won't rehash it. But Bryce at one point is like, Rigelus doesn't have starlight, but I do. We actually have, in my opinion, confirmation that Bryce's starlight is not actually starlight. And I also think that we have confirmation that this like light that the Starborn have is more than just light, right? Like the second is probably more obvious than the first. And I think we know this because of the Autumn King and his experiments. And I'm still mad that he's dead. So I do want to, I know you said we would talk about this. I know you said we would talk about this in a later episode, but I do want to talk about a little bit about what he was doing with
Let's do it.
Light refraction and recombination. So the Autumn King, Einar Danon, was doing a bunch of experiments in his study, right? So this is in House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 31. Bryce had come back from Prythian and strategically dropped herself back into the Autumn King's home, right? To basically purposefully trap herself in there to figure out whatever he knows about the Star Sword and Truth Teller, which were now both in her possession. And she walks in on him doing his prism experiments, which we learn about very early on, like House of Earth and Blood, when Einar asks Ruhn, like, can you give me a drop of your starlight so that I can run it through this prism? And there's like rainbows on the walls and it's all very pretty. So in chapter 31, he says, this device refracts the light, pulling it apart so I might study every facet of it. And then he pointed to a sister device positioned directly across from it. That device gathers it back into one beam again. I am attempting to add more to the light in the process of reforming it. If the light might be pulled apart and strengthened in its most basic form, there's a chance that it will coalesce into a more powerful version of itself. So on kind of surface level, it sounds like what Einar is trying to do is strengthen the starlight of the Fae back into the strength of the original starlight that he hasn't seen in a very long time. What the Autumn King was doing with the original prism was basically Isaac Newton's prism experiments, right? Which is pretty interesting, and had pretty far-reaching and interesting implications. And some of those implications were, one, that white light is not like pure at all, right? It was a mixture of all colors combined. That was one output of the prism experiment. Two, that the prism was not creating color. It was revealing colors that were already there. The second prism, recombining it back into white light, was like the ironclad proof, right? Like if it can recombine back into white light, it meant that there were no colors being created by the prism. It was all white light being spread and then white light being recombined. And prism experiments eventually led to astronomy and the ability to identify what stars were made of through spectroscopy, which is how we like understand what elements go into stars, what elements compose stars. So the Autumn King had literally been studying the composition of the Starborn's light. And if it is a Asteri light, like would he know it? He might know it. Like the Autumn King very well could understand, right? Like we are told in no uncertain terms when he and Bryce talk when she gets back from Prythian, she's like, the Asteri, if the Starborn light is different from their light and how it is different, that's what you want to know. That's where the orrery comes in, contemplating where we came from, what sort of light we have, how it can be weaponized. And he asks, and did you learn such things on your journey? So like, this is what he wants to know. Like, this is what he's been looking into. He wants to know what Starborn light is made out of. He wants to know whether it's a Asteri light. He's probably learned a lot, but he probably doesn't have access to a Asteri light. So why does this matter? Starlight, actual starlight, looks like a full color spectrum with some dark spots of absorption. So long story short, every element in the universe absorbs light at specific wavelengths, only those wavelengths. So like hydrogen would absorb at exactly the same set of positions in the spectrum, and sodium at its own set, and iron, whatever, so on. And so when starlight passes through the outer layers of a star, the atoms there swallow up those specific wavelengths before the light reaches us. And so there are like dark gaps in those spectrums. So what starlight looks like when it's refracted is like a rainbow spectrum, but with like dark gaps. But what does Bryce's starlight do when it hits the prism? Not that. It does not do that. I don't know whether I don't know whether Sarah J. Maas cared about what starlight looked like when it crossed through a prism, but I feel like she did. I feel like she would know.
I love so much that you did this. I love this so much.
So in House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 39, this is what Bryce's star does. Starlight hit the prism, passed through it, and it wasn't a rainbow that emerged from the other side. Not even close. It took her a moment to process what she was seeing. A gradient beam of starlight. Where the rainbow would have been full of color, this one began in shimmering white light and descended into shadow. An anti-rainbow, as it were. Light falling into darkness. Droplets of starlight raining from the highest beam into the shadowy hand at the bottom, devoured by the darkness below. So, no, Bryce, you do not have starlight. Rigelus doesn't have starlight, but also you do not have starlight. It's not pure starlight. So does this mean that she is exactly like the Asteri? Possibly. I also think it could mean that Thea's line is a combination with Hell, right? It is the Asteri ability to absorb light, but you also have the shadows, and that is where kind of the shadowy, devoured by darkness element comes in. Interestingly, right? Ruhn's starlight doesn't seem to do this. Like Ruhn's light goes through the prism as well, and we don't hear about it. We're not told exactly what it looks like. We don't get a full description, but I would think that we would get a description if it were like that, right? So in House of Earth and Blood, chapter 14, all we're told is Ruhn opened his eyes to find the starlight dancing at his fingertip, refracting through the prism. And we're told by Bryce earlier, like she's kind of making fun of the Autumn King, like, oh, are you just like looking at rainbows on the walls? So why is Bryce's light doing this and Ruhn's light is not? It seems related right to that second third that Bryce had just picked up in Prythian, but it's not a star. It's definitely not a star.
Yeah. I had that as the second part of my what is Bryce actually, but then I was like, oh, I don't know. This is a lot to take on whether or not she actually has a star, but I did have this about the prism. I totally think I don't think Bryce does have starlight. So we have this quote when Nesta and Bryce are talking. Nesta says, so you have a star within you, an actual star. Bryce shrugged with one shoulder. Yeah, I mean, not literally. It's not like a giant ball of gas spinning in space, but it's starlight, right? So she's like, well, it's not really a star, but it's light. And then, the prism thing. I want to add to that. The quote I had before about Vesperus being up to something on the prison, right? It said, hold on, let me just get back to it. The Daglan female who'd ruled it before her had chosen it for its natural defensive location, the mists that kept it veiled from others, right? So she's saying it's the mists that are keeping the prison veiled. We find out in Flame and Shadow when they go to Avalon, it's not the mists that keep the Asteri away, it's the black salt, right? Yeah. So if the prison is actually being hidden from the Asteri, does that mean there's also
tons of black salt in the prison. But then how is Vesperus there? Like, how is Vesperus able to handle that? I don't know. That's kind of Pre-Cog, but.
Well, and there are like giant word marks all over the prison too. So I think there
sure are
like more to be understood there. You had the theory that Thea was created as a straw. I think there's also, right, that moment in the prism experiment where Bryce basically like manually creates starfire that powers up herself.
She charges herself up. Yeah,
powers up her own horn, basically. And so, that's what I think that Thea was meant to be. Is like basically a battery pack, but one that was able to basically do this,
charge herself up. Yeah. I agree. It seems something about the Asteri not having access to the power of the land, and Fae having access to the power of the land, and the Asteri wanting to be more powerful, absorb more power, I think is what went to the Starborn Fae. Or maybe Vesperus met a nice Fae man, fell in love, they had a child, and that's what happened. It could be. I don't know. Seems unlikely. But
Vesper specifically said that she was always looking for, like, she commented, right, when Bryce told her about the parasite, she was like, we were always looking for ways to do this more easily, to do this better. And if Thea was basically an experiment for her to understand whether they could ever become circular in some way,
self-charge,
then that would
self-charge.
Make a lot of sense.
I think it makes sense. You guys don't have to think it makes sense, and you can leave comments if you don't think it makes sense. But I'm pretty sold on this at this. There are too many pieces of this pointing towards Thea having gotten her power from the Asteri for it to not lead to something, right? And that something cannot be just Apollyon saying, "Oh, it's not the same power." Like, then we need an explanation for what the origin of this power is, because it sure seems like the same power. And I don't think we've gotten that yet. So, with that,
Power Plus, probably.
Power what?
All right. Power Plus. I do think there's something else. My vote is that there's something else in the mix, but I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
Anyways, Abby, what is the significance of question 4 of 7? Of 7. Abby, what is the significance of the 8-pointed star?
Let's talk about the 8-pointed star. Spoiler, all roads lead to Vesperus. All right. But let's talk about it at the beginning. So, Bryce has a scar in the shape of the 8-pointed star, as we know. She says she thinks it's the symbol of the Starborn, but she doesn't actually know. So this is Bryce and Nesta again. Nesta said, the scar your light comes from, it's shaped like an 8-pointed star. Why? Bryce peered at where the light was muffled by her t-shirt. It's the symbol of the Starborn, I think. And the magic marked you this way? Yes. When I revealed who I was, what I am to the world, I drew the star out of my chest. It left that scar in its wake. She glanced to Azrael like a burn. And then later, Nesta even questions this. So she says, so that 8-pointed star, Nesta said into the quiet as they began walking again, it's a symbol of the Starborn people in your world. It means nothing else, right? So is it actually a symbol of the Starborn? Is it a symbol of something else? We also know that Nesta and Cassian both have an 8-pointed star tattooed on their backs after they make a bargain together. All of these things touched by the Asteri. Let's be clear about that up front, right? So we just went through a very long answer how we think Bryce is linked to the Asteri. Nesta has gone into the cauldron, which was corrupted by the Asteri. Cassian is an Illyrian. We know that the Illyrians are made by the Asteri. You can listen to our Illyrian deep dive from last season if you want to go more into that. We have the most important 8-pointed star, in my opinion, in this entire cosmos, probably, is in the harp chamber in the prison, right? So the quotes we have for that, we first see it in Silver Flames. The harp sat atop a large rendering of an 8-pointed star. Its cardinal points stretched longer than the other 4, with the harp situated directly in the heart of the star. So basically, we also have the shape of the 8-pointed star, right? It's basically a compass with, you got your half directions as well. So it's a compass star. We're told this is the symbol of the Starborn. It seems to touch a lot of Asteri things, but we never see any Asteri in Midgard use the 8-pointed star as an emblem, as anything, right? They have I believe they have 6, maybe 7 stars as their emblem, but they do not have an 8-pointed star. Yeah.
And
did you have something?
The only place it's found in Midgard is in Avallen, which is
the
where
only
the Fae
place
of
it's
Crescent
found
live.
in Midgard is Avallen. And I think this is very important. The 8-pointed star existed in the harp chamber before Selene made any of her carvings, right? So the quote we have for that is, "My mother did not question Peleus, her conspirator and ally, when he told her to will the horn and harp to open a doorway to this world. She did not question how and why he knew this island, our misty home, was the best place to do it. She simply gathered our people, all those willing to conquer and colonize, and opened the doorway in a chamber. This chamber, if the 8-pointed star on the floor was any indication, though the celestial carvings had not yet been added beside red-haired Fae who looked alarmingly like Bryce's father, blah, blah, blah." So the star existed before Selene comes back from Midgard and does all her carvings, right? Before this palace was Thea's palace, it was Vesperus's palace, right? As we just talked about. In mythology, there are a lot of 8-pointed stars, but I want to talk about one in specifically. There are a lot. So I will say this might be me wanting my theory to work here, okay? But one of the most famous depictions, representations of the 8-pointed star is the Star of Ishtar. The Star of Ishtar is a Mesopotamian symbol of the ancient Sumerian goddess Inanna, her East Semitic counterpart Ishtar, and the Roman goddess Venus. In Greek mythology, Venus is also called, Ronnie, do you want to do the honors?
Vesperus.
Okay? It's Vesperus's star. It's Vesperus's star. It is not the Asteri star. It is Vesperus's star. This is a symbol of Vesperus, okay? So once again, all roads lead to Vesperus. All right, so I do still think we have a couple options here. Either the star is truly the symbol of Vesperus, right? So the Vesperus, this was her palace, her star. She put it in the harp chamber. She said, "This is mine." That's option one. It is Vesperus. Could also be the star of Thea, who had the power of the evening star, right? Venus is, I think this is important, and we will talk about this probably at great length in this series. Venus is known as both the morning star and the evening star. Because of its proximity to the sun, it appears both in the morning and the evening. Very important. We'll talk about our next episode. Danica means morning star. We'll get back to that. All right. So it is both the morning star and the evening star. And Lucifer. We know that the power of the prison, the power of the island is the evening star, right? So it could be the symbol of Vesperus. It could just be the symbol of Thea, right? Thea could say, okay, I have the power of the evening star now that Vesperus is gone. Dusk, twilight, that's my power. I'm going to make this my emblem, which also fits with the Starborn line. Those are kind of the only two options. It's either Vesperus or Thea, but I think it's Vesperus. I think it's all roads lead to Vesperus, but anything else you want to add there? Because I do think she does some cool things with it that I would like to talk about, but it doesn't answer the fundamental question of what is the 8-pointed star.
I mean, I think I agree. I think it makes most sense to be Vesperus's. There's two interesting things, I guess. One, I think we know that Vesperus didn't rule alone. And she knows Regulus. So, and there's 7 Asteri. We're 7 Asteri on Midgard. So we're all 8 ever together. Like, could that ever have been representative of a group of 8 at any point? Don't know. And there are also 8 territories, right? Wow. And there were those territories existing prior. So could it have been a symbol of Prythian? That would be really interesting if it
that'd be really interesting.
Even Vesperus somehow, or if the Asteri like adapted it based off of the power of the land.
I think that's a really interesting idea because in the harp chamber, Bryce says that the 8-pointed star is Midgard, right? She's like looking, basically what Selene does is carve a map. And we know the 8-pointed star already existed, but the 8-pointed star is in the place where Midgard should be, right? So she scanned the room again and turned the 8-pointed star directly between Lakos and Thur. Midgard, the name seemed to echo in the chamber. Someone went to an awful lot of trouble to make this floor, someone who'd been to my world and then came back here, right? So this is my aside here. I think what Selene is doing here is really fucking cool. She's basically leaving a map, right? Like, I think she's basically leaving a map. Like, she's like saying, okay, for my Starborn heir, your third of Thea's star is here in this star, but I'm going to draw you a map to Midgard to where the other third of your star is going to be where my sister left it, right? She's basically leaving a map, right? Like, I think she's basically leaving a map. Like, she's like saying, okay, for my Starborn heir, your third of Thea's star is here in this star, but I'm going to draw you a map to Midgard to where the other third of your star is going to be where my sister left it, right? So that's what Selene did there, which I think is really fucking cool. I love your idea that it's Prythian because of the way these worlds seem to stack on top of each other, right? So like we know that Prythian and Midgard have thin places between each other. So is that universe also the universe of Prythian in like different timelines or in different dimensions, right? If it's meant to represent Midgard, is it also representing Prythian?
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
Part of it has just been brought back to life. And Avallen is such a mirror to the prison.
Yeah.
Like, true sister island.
Yeah, right. We'll talk about. But yeah.
I also think the map point begs the question, like, is that evidence, and maybe it's not, that these ley lines that span worlds that allow communication across worlds had to have connected Prythian to Midgard because they needed to be able to communicate regarding where the power was hidden, because neither of them hid that power until afterwards.
I don't know because it's just Midgard. It's not like, hey, here's Avallen. Hey, it's on Avallen, right? And like, obviously Selene knew. So Ada said he talked to Helena, and Helena only realized later in life what Thea had actually done. But I think we can assume Selene knew because Selene immediately put that bit of Thea's star in the ground in the prison, right? As soon as she got back, she put it in the ground. So like, I think Selene knew. So I think Selene knew that the other third of Thea's star was in Midgard. But it's not specifically in Avallen necessarily. I think she would just have been able to say it's on Midgard. I don't know where it is on Midgard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, cool. All right, Ronnie, why do Bryce and Ruhn have different starlights?
All right. So Ruhn's starlight is comparatively weak for most of the book, right? And it's coupled with shadows. Even when he gets the antidote, it's not as strong as Bryce's. And we learned this pretty early on in House of Earth and Blood, right? Beyond his starborn gifts, the bulk of his magic skewed towards his mother's kin, the Fae who ruled Avallen. And we learn it takes him like a good amount of concentration to summon his starlight, and it usually left him with a headache for hours afterwards. That's tough. So yeah. He is starborn. He has enough starlight to, again, claim the Star Sword from the Cave of Princes. However, it's not Bryce's starlight. The Princes of Hell also confirm that he can't be charged up the way that Bryce can, right? So Hunt asks, can I do the same for Ruhn, when they learn that Hunt is a backup battery for Bryce? And Thanatos says no. The Prince's light, his affinity for these thin places isn't strong enough, not like hers. We know that Bryce inherited Helena's third of power genetically. And we know this because Ada said when they were in hell, I'd say you had a third of Thea's power already, the part that originally was given to Helena. That came down to you through Helena's bloodline. And you took another third from where Selene stashed it. But if you can find the last third, the part that Thea originally kept for herself, I wonder how your light might appear then, what it might do. So we learned from this line that Bryce inherits Helena's third, and that Selene stashed the third that Thea gave her in the prison, and Helena stashed the third that Thea kept for herself that she originally hid in the Star Sword. Helena took that and stashed it in Avallen. This is surprisingly hard to keep up with in the book, so I'm just laying it out simply. So as she's learning all of this, Bryce and Hunt are like trying to keep up, and Hunt is like, so to unite the sword and the knife, Bryce needs to find the starlight that Helena took from the Star Sword, the last third of Thea's power, which is stashed somewhere in Avallen, and the princes are like, yep, good luck. So she goes and does that, luckily. So why does this matter? We know from the statement that whatever was given to each of the two sisters, Selene and Helena, was what would have been passed down genetically. And it was passed down genetically through Helena. We know that Selene put her portion into the prison, but Helena didn't put her portion anywhere. Helena just had it because Bryce has it now. So I am once again thinking that the Autumn King is not Starborn. Here's why. And the reason is that Ruhn, two things. One, Ruhn has barely anything. He's Bryce's kin, right? And two, Ruhn looks, we'll talk about this more, exactly like Rhys. Exactly like Rhys, who is descended from Celene's line. If Ruhn's mother is of Celene's line, however that happens, right? I don't know how far back it goes. I don't really care how far back it goes. Celene's line would have basically nothing coming from it, right? Would have basically nothing because she gave it, before she had children, she put it away. She put it away immediately. She stashed the starlight.
Yeah, she put away Thea's part, but she still had her own starlight because her son glowed with the light of the evening star.
So this is where it actually gets kind of tricky because Bryce gets Thea's starlight from Helena, who kept Thea's starlight in her. Selene puts Thea's starlight away. So we don't really know how strong Helena's own starlight genetically would have been. So Selene maybe had like her own starlight, but maybe it was pretty weak. Maybe it was like not, because she said her son sometimes glowed, like occasionally glowed.
No, okay, so I see what you're saying. So Bryce has Helena, Thea split up her star, right?
Mm-hmm.
She put a third in Helena, she put a third in Selene, she put a third in the Star Sword. Helena took Thea's third from the Star Sword, put it in Avalon, but she kept the third that she had from Thea, and that eventually ends up in Bryce.
Ada says, the part that was originally given to Helena that came down to you through Helena's bloodline, which makes me wonder what could have come down through Selene. Because we've not seen much in Selene's bloodline. Right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Very, very little, actually.
Yeah.
So it would make sense, right? If what Ruhn got was like what Selene had. I'm kind of thinking it's Selene, which would be crazy, right? Like it would mean that Lauren would have to somehow have a connection to Prythian. And I don't know that I'm necessarily hanging my hat on a near-term connection to Prythian, but it would mean that Lauren would somehow have to be from Selene's line. And it would have to mean that Ember is of Helena's, which is even crazier. I don't know how this would all work. I do not know. But this is the only thing that is making sense unless Cormac at one point said that their lines crossed, right? Long time ago. The Autumn King's lines crossed with Morven's lines. So if the Autumn King has a tiny bit of Helena's through that line, through Avalon's line, through Morven's lines, and he gave that tiny bit to Ruhn, it would still mean that Ember would have to have something going on.
Probably.
But at least that would maybe mean that Lauren doesn't have to be connected to Prythian.
Yeah. And I think we will talk about it more in our Ruhn deep dive, which is totally fine. I believe that Rigelus says that Ruhn has Peleus's starlight, which again could be a lie, but opens up a big question about if Peleus had starlight, how did he get it? Yeah. Where did it come from? And is that the starlight that Ruhn has? So
yeah, and that would work.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think it's a different starlight because also then Ruhn is able to heal when he takes the antidote, and we have no indication that Bryce can heal, right? So it does seem like they are different starlights in some way, and I'm sure we'll explore that more as the season goes on. That's all I have to say about that right now.
All right, next question. Abby, why does the Starborn line seem to be stronger in females than males?
Right. So I have like the beginnings of an idea here, and it's not fully formed, but maybe you can help me out. Okay, so we know, as we just talked about, that males can be starborn. So Ruhn is an example. We have Selene's son, right? So, but as you just said, that he occasionally glowed. He didn't always glow. And then we think that Nyx is also going to have the starborn power. And the reason we think that is the baby whom Rhys and Feyre named Nyx was as beautiful as anyone could ever dream a baby to be. Dark hair with blue eyes that already glowed with his father and mother's starlight, offsetting the light tan of his skin. Also, once again, that is like the Vesperous look, once again, passed on through this baby, right? So we have potentially Nyx. But in general, the strongest manifestations of these powers seem to be Thea, Helena, Selene, and Bryce. Rigelus, when he is interpreted and he is pretending to be Adis, implies that there's something about being female and having this power, right? So he says, Thea was dead by that point, Adis said flatly. Peleus slew her. He nodded to the star sword in Ruhn's hand and stole her blade when he'd finished. He snarled, That sword belongs to Thea's female heir, not the male offspring who corrupted her line, right? So is this power stronger in females than males? What would be the reason for that? I think there's a piece of this Starborn power that we haven't talked about yet that is very important. And we see it happen twice. We see it happen with Selene and we see it happen with Bryce. So when Bryce claims that second third of Thea's star, she is able to control the island, right? So she can literally shape the island to her will. I said, bear with me. This is a lot of quotes, but I think they're all important. So like a small sun emerging from the stone itself, a ball of light burst from the floor. A star twin to the one in Bryce's chest. Her starlight at last awoke again, as if reaching out with shining fingers for that star hovering inches away. With trembling hands, Bryce guided the star to the one gleaming on her chest into her body. White light erupted everywhere. Power, uncut and ancient, scorched through her veins. The hair on her head rose. Blah, blah, blah. We've already read this. She was the evening star, etc. She was the evening star in the last rays of color before the dark. Asriel had nearly reached the tunnel. Another flap of his wings and he'd be swallowed by its dark mouth. But at a mere thought from Bryce, stalactites and stalagmites formed, closing in on him. The room became a wolf, its jaws snapping for the winged warrior. The rock had moved for her as it had for Selene. Stop him, she said in a voice that was more like her father's than anything she'd ever heard come out of her mouth. Asriel swept for the tunnel and slammed into a wall of stone. The exit had sealed. Bryce lifted a hand and spike after spike of rock ruptured from the ground, blocking Nesta's advance. The chamber shuddered again. From far away, she could sense it. The things lurking within the mountain, her mountain. Twisted, wretched creatures. She says it's her mountain, right? She says her mountain. Twisted, wretched creatures. Some had been here since Selene had trapped them, had been contemplating their escape and revenge all this time. She'd let them out if she restored the mountain to its former glory. And in that moment, the mountain, the island, spoke to her. Alone, it was so alone it had been waiting all this time, cold and adrift in this thrashing gray sea. If she could reach out, if she could open her heart to it, it might sing again. Awaken, there was a beating, vibrant heart locked away far beneath them. If she freed it, the land would rise from its slumber and such wonders would spring again from this earth. So this is what happens with Avalon, right? And we're seeing here that she can actually hear the land and like terraform the land. It feels very Mother Earth, kind of like Gaia. I don't know. Like it feels like the creation of planets, basically, right? Like, is that what this Starborn power actually is? Is she able to have this connection to the land and like just create? And that feels inherently female, right? It feels inherently like life bringing. I don't know if that's like strong enough for an answer to this question, but like, I think this is a crazy part of her power that has kind of been like just like glossed over so far. Obviously, I hope we get more of it in book 4. I don't know. That's kind of my thinking. Very Pre-Cog. What do you think?
Yeah, I didn't land in like a very solid place on this one. I'm wondering, to your point earlier on like, are there other Starborn lines? Is because this is a female line, this line manifests most strongly in females. But does that always have to be the case?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, because it is interesting. We've talked about this before, right? But like, it is interesting that we have the fact that it manifests most strongly in females, but then on Prithian, females are suppressed from Selene onwards, right? Like she basically makes it so that that's the case, almost as like punishment for herself, but then she decides to punish like future generations.
And on Avalon too. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought my thought is because it is Thea's line, that it is in Thea's power, maybe even Vesperos' power, but I don't really know how much genders like matter for Asteri.
For the Asteri, yeah.
Any body. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for this one because Sarah J. Maas also just tends to write much stronger women.
I agree.
Typically.
It might just be a girl power thing.
Yeah. Like we're not talking about this series right now, but the series we're not talking about, woman in that one, force of nature. So
yes. Yeah. So I don't know. But it could be a Mother Earth thing. Could just be because we like women here.
Could be Mother Earth. I like the Mother Earth thought. And Asteri are gendered, I guess, because Sirius was a her. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they just choose bodies. I don't know. I don't know that it's permanent, right? Like Rigelus is a Fae male here, but what was he on Aurelia? You know?
Well, allegedly that, because Bryce recognizes him, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Hate that detail, but you know.
All right, Ronnie, why can some Starborn Fae winnow, wield shadows, and mindspeak, but others cannot?
I think the simple answer to this is, for the most part, because Selene and Helena could, and the line is descended from them. And then Bryce, again, I think something's going on with Ember. I think that's what's going on there. But we can talk about it. Maybe we can just start with all of these Starborn powers are mostly linked to Avallen. And what's most notable is that Bryce is really the only one missing them, and Bryce does not have Avallen lineage. So Avallen, of course, like most of Avallen, is tied to Helena, and we know that Selene at least was Daemati. I think we can infer that Helena was probably Daemati, at least had the ability to pass on Daemati genetics, probably, if Selene received them. I'm assuming. And we know that the Daemati abilities are associated heavily with the Starborn and the Avallen Fae, because Bryce says, like, this whole section is about your fancy Avallen cousins, shadow walking, mind reading. I'm surprised they don't claim they are Starborn. Like, these things just are lumped together in the scope of being Starborn. Daemati is just part of that. Again, I think that Bryce might have hints of this gift because Sarah J. Maas has decided to throw a she must have voiced her thoughts aloud moment at us, which authors love to do. We also have the dreamscape situation happening with Ruhn, right? Again, I'm not super clear whether Ruhn is purely Avallen, whether something else is going on there, whether he's linked to Prythian, but Lauren is said to be from Avallen, right? I think we can, let's just say that Lauren is from Avallen. Ruhn is able to communicate with Lydia in dreams across an ocean. Like, yeah. That's not, like, Daemati power in Prythian still requires proximity, right? Yeah. And we see a little bit of that with Rhys and Feyre too, right? When he's under the mountain and she is in the human realm and they're kind of seeing each other's dreams as well. What is this dreamscape? We are only seeing it when the princes of hell visit. Yeah. So I think that's another point for, is hell involved in the Starborn line? I think so. That's kind of where this is going, but let's continue. So Daemati. Daemati, the people who are Daemati seem to also be able to communicate in dreams. And the only people who are communicating in dreams other than the Daemati people are princes of hell. So there's that.
Well, Vesperus does say she saw the middle in her dreams.
Vesperus does say she saw the middle in her dreams. She was sitting underground in a half stupor for 15,000 years and saw the middle. That's true.
And she saw Thea dancing on her grave. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so the Asteri and the Princes of Hell. The Princes of Hell are for sure communicating in dreams, and the Asteri can at least see things in dreams.
It does seem to be, exactly, two slightly different powers. The Princes of Hell, exactly like Ruhn, exactly like you said, can talk to people through their dreams. But then what Rhys is doing and what Vesperus seems to be doing is seeing the world through dreams, right? Because Rhys says he saw Feyre painting, he saw Feyre shoot the wolf. He wasn't talking to her. And it wasn't her dreams, right? It was the real world, which is what Vesperus is doing too, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. And if she is tied to the land and or any of these beings that she has made, then that could also explain how she's seeing it. But then I don't know, like, do you have a shared consciousness with anything that you've created? Like, that's a terrifying thought. So I don't know. Yeah. So in conclusion, I think mind speaking, dream speaking, definitely linked to the Starborn, also linked to definitely hell, also Asteri, sort of, but not necessarily in the same capacity. Like what Ruhn and Lydia are doing are much closer to what Apollyon is coming and doing with Bryce and Hunt. I will say it's interesting that Lydia is also able to do it. I'll just leave it there.
I will say that too.
This.
I will say that too.
Yep. All right. Shadows. So this is where it gets interesting, right? I think this is where it gets interesting. Ruhn's shadow abilities are crazy. I think his shadow abilities are crazy. He can shadow walk, which we just kind of gloss over, but he can do it. And he thinks they're more interesting. I frankly think they're more interesting than a starlight too, he says. His starborn abilities were little more than a sparkle of starlight in his palm. His shadow talents were the more interesting gift. Even the temperature monitors on the high-tech cameras in this city couldn't detect him when he shadow walked. The only shadow walking that we've seen that's even comparable is from Azrael, right? Yeah. So he can become a shadow. He can become shadows themselves. I'll just leave that there. Okay. All right. So Ruhn can wield shadows, can shadow walk, can become a shadow, can become basically invisible to not only the naked eye, but literally to temperature sensors. He's like barely human in that moment, just borderline shapeshifting. It's very, very confusing, very bizarre. And the princes of hell can be shadows in front of Hunt's cells as well. And Rigelus says that the princes of hell are shadows when he is talking to Bryce, right? So he says, have you been talking to shadows when he's asked about the Black Crown? So again, feeling linked to hell-ish, sort of.
Feeling very hell.
feeling a little hell. Cormac's shadows are wilder. They're said to be wilder. And they seem to actually help him winnow, right? Ruhn can't winnow. We haven't seen him winnow. In House of Sky and Breath Chapter 4, Bryce describes them as different, right? Shadows also swirled behind Cormac, darker, wilder than Ruhn's, like a stampede of stallions waiting to gallop over all of them. I wanted to confirm that she is the gift. Thank you for demonstrating. He set one foot into those untamed shadows, bowed his head to Bryce. I'll see you at the altar. Bryce's star winked out the moment he vanished, leaving only drifting embers behind. What I think is interesting about this, Cormac can definitely winnow, right? Like he's the one who teaches Bryce how to winnow. In this quote, it sounds like he is stepping into his shadows to disappear. I don't know whether that was just like a fun detail.
Artistic flourish, yeah.
Yeah. Whether it was a little, flick of the paintbrush, but we are told by Bryce, right, that Azrael's shadows look more like Cormac's shadows than Ruhn's shadows. And we know that what Azrael's doing is not quite winnowing. It is not winnowing the way that other people are winnowing. So shadows are very interesting in this capacity for two reasons, right? One, because they're more linked to hell than they're linked to the Asteri. Like how did shadows end up in this line? But two, how did they end up in an Illyrian line? Like, if these come from Selene and Helena, which I think that they do, right? Because Selene tells us we bore the shadows as well as the light, and that is how we hid in the enemy stronghold and found out everything we knew about the Asteri. How did their power end up in an Illyrian line? I don't have the answer. I'm just positioning the question.
Or did Apollyon pay a visit to Azrael in the dungeons? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if this is Selene and Helena's father is Adis, right? Or Apollyon granted a power to Selene and Helena that they wouldn't have otherwise had, then that could very well be the reason that Azrael also has it. But it's a question.
I think what's interesting about what you said here too is there is a quote. Bryce says her and Cormac's teleporting works differently, right? So Bryce put her hands on her hips as she panted, "Your teleporting works differently than mine. How can you know that? Mine comes from a source of magic too, energy, just a different form. Each jump takes more out of me. It's a muscle that you need to build up." So Cormac is the only other Fae on Midgard that can winnow, but he says his winnowing comes from a different source. So it seems to me like he does whatever Azrael. I know we said Azrael shadow walks. He does, but he also like winnows, right? Because
he does. Yeah, totally does.
Just so it seems to me like Cormac and Azrael have this winnowing ability from a different source than what Bryce has.
Yeah.
Which is confusing. I don't understand.
Yeah. It does seem, by the way, like we experience much more of Bryce's winnowing like firsthand, even though this is all third person, like quote firsthand, than what Cormac experiences. That seems more similar to like classic Fae winnowing on Prythian. Yeah. What Cormac is doing, stepping into shadow, like that seems like it could be what Azrael is doing. I think you're right. Which brings us to winnowing. So Cormac links winnowing to Starborn abilities. So when Bryce sees him doing it, she's like, you're going to teach me how to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. And Cormac says, if it's within your wheelhouse, I will. And Hunt's like, can Faye just do this shit? And Cormac is like, I can do this shit. If Bryce has as much Starborn ability as she seems to, she might also be able to do this shit. And he says it was once a gift of the Starborn. It was the reason I became so focused on attaining the Star Sword. I thought my ability to teleport meant that the bloodline had resurfaced in me, as I've never met anyone else who can do it. Which is super interesting, right? Like, why did this ability suddenly resurface in Cormac? I don't know. Again, are we getting cross-world fuckery that we're not aware of here? I'm completely unclear. But so far, from what we can tell, it's Cormac and Bryce.
Yeah, that's it.
It's Cormac and Bryce.
Well, and Thea.
And Thea, yes.
Yeah.
And Thea.
But
and like
currently
probably,
just Cormac and Bryce.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh, I was about to say currently living, but oof, it's tough. Yeah. Bryce. R.I.P. Cormac.
Alive during these books.
Yeah. Yes. So winnowing is really, as far as we can tell, just connected to Prythian. I don't think we have any direct link between winnowing and hell. But I think what is interesting is that it's not only a common trait on Prythian, but it also could be because Bryce is literally a world walker. Everyone who's winnowing is a very powerful fae. Like, what is winnowing if not mini world walking, right? Thea was a world walker. Bryce is a world walker. Everyone who's doing it on Midgard is walking worlds at this point. So
I just pulled quotes describing the two of them, and they're described so similarly. All right. So we have Bryce describing teleporting while she's having sex with Hunt. She says she was falling through time and space, and light and shadow. Up was down and down was up. And they were the only beings in existence here in this garden, locked away from time. So we have falling and light and shadow. Hunt describing teleporting during sex with Bryce. This is the second time they teleport. Then he was falling amid black wind and lightning and stars. He came through all of it, roaring his pleasure to the skies because there were skies above them and city lights, booming bass from a nearby party. So again, we have falling, we have black wind, we have lightning. Bryce teleporting to the gates. Bryce gave herself to the wind and darkness and teleported for the gates. Winnowing with Rhys. When Rhys grabs Bryce's hand and winnows, we get, after Ruhn's body double had introduced himself in that lovely cozy foyer, he'd grabbed her hand. The strength of his grip, the brush of his calluses against her skin had been the only solid things as wind and darkness had roared around them, the world dropping away. So far, that's all winnowing, right? So we have wind, we have darkness, we have falling, we have the world dropping away. When Bryce world walks, she says, Bryce thrust her power out, willed the gate to take her and her alone, and she was falling, while standing still, suspended in the archway, sucked backwards so that her hair trailed outward, toward Rigelus's straining fingers. No, he bellowed. It was the last sound Bryce heard as the darkness within the gate swallowed her. She fell slowly without end. Blah, blah, blah. She was screaming into the wind and stars and emptiness, right? So that is very similar to what Hunt described as their winnowing. It's very similar to how winnowing is described with Rhys as well. So like, and it could just be, how many ways can you describe moving through space and time? Like there's not that many ways to describe this. That could be what's going on.
Yeah.
But they seem very similar.
They do. Always have. Yeah. So in conclusion, Shadow's mind speaking, feeling very hell. Winnowing, feeling very world walking, which we are told that before the Asteri lost access to their power, they were able to world walk, right? So it's not actually that crazy to link this to a Starborn ability, the winnowing, that is. Because Bryce is still relatively close to her source of power in terms of like time and lineage, right? There's still a matter of like 10 generations from when they were like actually near their home source.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Bryce, I
do think that part doesn't, like, that part gives pause, right? When the Asteri are like, we were far from our home source, and so we lost that ability. Like,
Bryce is far from her home
Starborn
source.
have not been there for 15,000 years.
It's a good point.
Why is it suddenly able to be resurfaced?
Yeah. And that quote, just so you guys have it, is our brightest minds found ways to bend the fabric of worlds to travel between them. Wayfarers, we called them, world walkers. And then Bryce, that's Phosphorus. And then Bryce says, if you knew how to open portals between worlds, why did you need to rely on the Dread Trove? Once we left our homeworld, our powers began to dim. Too late, we realized that we had been dependent on our land's inherent magic. The magic in other worlds was not potent enough, yet we could not find the way back home. So
The Asteri used to be able to world walk without the trove, without external influences, right? We actually talked about this in our Places of Prythian episode. Like, can the Asteri still world walk? It seems like the answer is no when they're on Prythian because they are too far away from their home magic source. So that, but this does seem like a power that the Asteri have. And Hal doesn't really have it, right? Because Adis says when he's in, I think it's when he's in the chamber. I just read this quote today when Bryce sees him in the chamber. Or when Hunt sees him in the chamber, Hunt's like, why can't you go do this thing, blah, blah, blah. And Ada says, I'm not actually here. Like, I'm not here. I'm not world walking right now. You're seeing a projection of me, but like my body is not here, which is not world walking, right? So if we're saying, which is kind of what we're postulating, but doesn't have to be true, that this is either from Asteri or from Hal, it points to being from Asteri, which raises a lot of questions about all the people who can winnow on Prythian, right? Why do so many people have that ability on Prythian? I made a little chart of who has what powers from the Starborn line, and Thea and Bryce's powers line up perfectly. Like, Thea has Starlight and she has winnowing, but I don't think she has Daemati power. I said I would talk about this later. The reason I don't think she has Daemati power is because she doesn't know that Peleus has betrayed her, right? She says she had no way of knowing that he is Peleus here, had spent our era of peace learning ancient summoning magic and searching the cosmos for whatever remained of the Daglin on other worlds, right? So Selene says that about Thea. Not she didn't know, she had no way of knowing, right? Yeah. If she's Daemati, she has a way of knowing. Yeah. So I don't think that Thea was Daemati. I think that started with her daughters.
Yeah. And I once again ask, who is Fionn?
Who is Fionn? I have the same question.
And what is going on with him and what are his powers? Yeah, I would like to know.
I have the same questions. Did you have anything else on this one?
Not for now. No.
Not for now.
Yeah.
I'd say my big question of all of this, based on everything we've just gone through with these powers, is why can't Ruhn teleport? Why can't Ruhn winnow? Either through shadow walking or what we think is the more traditional actual form of winnowing with the world walking. Like, is it the parasite? Does he just not know how to do it? Like, it seems to me like Ruhn should be able to do it, but we haven't seen him do that yet. So I don't know. Yeah. We shall see.
My big question is, did Thea have a third child?
That's an intriguing question. What makes you say that?
I don't know. Just like Bryce of Selene and Helena are just not making sense to me.
I agree. Bryce does not have the coloring of Selene and Helena. Bryce does not have the powers of Selene and Helena. She only has Thea's powers. Like, she doesn't have any of the extra stuff. So, except the winnowing. But Thea had winnowing. Never mind. I see what you're saying. I understand why you're asking this question.
These are the questions I have. Like, she claimed only Thea's powers. None of Selene and Helena's. She received Thea's third of power from Helena's bloodline, allegedly.
Yeah.
I have questions. That's all.
I have questions too. I hope you guys are enjoying this as our first episode. I feel like we're getting so deep here.
Yeah.
I hope you did your homework. All right. So that is the conclusion of our official Crescent City ACOTAR section. Again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I feel like we got real into the nitty gritty, but typically that's what you guys are here for. So I hope you enjoyed. Obviously, we'll continue to talk about all of this more. We are going to go into the Throne of Glass spoilers section of our episode. So if you have not read all 8 Throne of Glass novels, we recommend turning around now. As always, you can find us on social media. We are Drags in the Details Pod on pretty much all social channels. If you like us, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, etc. It helps us out a lot. And we will be back next week. So spoilers from here on out for Throne of Glass until the end of this sentence. All right. So the way we're doing this one, guys, obviously this has been a crazy episode. I don't think we didn't have many more Throne of Glass specific questions necessarily. So this is just going to kind of be if Ronnie, if I have anything to add from the Throne of Glass world into this Starborn question of what the hell the Starborn Fae are and other things that are going on. So I'm going to start. I have a couple and then we'll just alternate basically. So my first one, it's kind of two. I'm going to start with Death Maidens, right? Because we talked about in the why is this more powerful in the female line question, Bryce's power seemingly of creation, which we did not talk about a lot in this episode, which I had notes on, but I thought we had better things to talk about is the power of destruction piece of it, which is she can create a black hole, right? What is destruction if not a black hole, a void, right? So Bryce definitely seems to have the power of both creation and destruction. Irene says the power, Irene we find out is a death maiden from Erewhon. Irene says we find out the power of creation and destruction, that's what lay within her. That's what being a death maiden seems to be. And that also seems to be a primarily female gift, hence the maiden piece of death maiden, right? So we have these two things kind of lining up. Obviously, Bryce and Irene have different powers. Irene has the healing. Ruhn has the healing. So I'm still not totally sure how I feel about that. I don't know. We've talked about the similarity between the Valg and the Asteri homeworlds. Erewhon says the Death Maidens are from his world. Maybe the Valg and the Asteri are actually all from the same homeworlds. Like maybe that is the case, but they don't seem to be Valg, right? But maybe the Asteri and the Valg both lived on the same homeworld, and the Asteri had the power to defeat the Valg, and the Valg seemingly have the power to defeat the Asteri. That gets into a little Pre-Cog territory. The real theory here is the power of creation and destruction that Bryce has seems very similar to how Irene describes her power. That's my first omission. I'm acknowledging that. All right. Do you have any?
A very small one. And I didn't prep for it because it just came to me as you were talking about that. Aren't we told that Valg princesses are stronger than princes?
Yeah, we are.
Which is also interesting, right?
Yeah. Could just be the girl power thing, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it could totally be the girl power thing. I mean, even the villains in these series, the women are stronger. So like Vesperus, Maeve. You've always got like an Erewhon or a Rigelus, and then they're just like outshined by the big bad woman.
This is why I'm not convinced that the Asteri are the big bads. Like, I'm not convinced that Rigelus is the big bad of Crescent City because he's a fucking man. It has never been a man. It's always a woman.
Never been a
like,
man. Never.
I guess, well, we had Amarantha and ACOTAR, but I'm not really convinced we've seen the big bad of ACOTAR yet either. I don't know.
Briaxis is a woman.
Briaxis is a woman. It's all coming up, women.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more things. I want to acknowledge that there are Asterion Fae in Throne of Glass. I'm acknowledging it.
Now. Interesting.
I'm going to talk about it in much more depth in our next episode. That's why I'm just acknowledging it now. Yeah. Okay, so I'm acknowledging it. I know that it exists. It sounds like Ronnie and I have gotten to some similar places, which I'm very excited about. I know they exist. That's the just don't comment and be like, why didn't you guys talk about the Asterion Fae? We're going to. They exist. I'm acknowledging it. I also am acknowledging that the 8-pointed star is seen on a priestess's head who worships the mother in Throne of Glass, and that Manon calls herself Maid with a capital M multiple times. I'm acknowledging all of that. I don't have answers for them right now. I'm just letting you guys know that I know that happened and that at some point we will talk about it, but I did not have the brain capacity to talk about it in this episode. I had one more fun small thing.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron says that she's going to explode into Starfire at one point, which is fun.
Yeah, it's all fun. It's all fun. But yeah, that's pretty much the big pieces of this, I guess, of the Throne of Glass. Omissions, next episode, we're going to have a lot more to talk about with Throne of Glass. All right, Pre-Cog Corner.
Okay, I'm going to do a small, wild Pre-Cog because this episode is big and wild, so I'm going to do small and wild. So Prythian famously is very hard to find, right? By the Asteri, maybe by Hell. We don't know whether it's hard to find by Hell. But Thea, when the gate opens between her and Adis, the portal opens between her and Adis, it said that like their souls were the reason, like their mated souls were the reason that bridge was found. So we also get multiple mentions in House of Flame and Shadow when Bryce, Nesta, and Azriel are walking around underneath the hewn city and under the prison, of how much the water and like the earth down there smells like iron. Quotes for that. Bryce knew it wasn't endless only because far, far below water roared. These are those underground waterways that lead out from the middle and into under the mountain. A large subterranean river if the sound was this loud even up here. Bits of spray floated from the darkness, the damp air laced with a thick metallic scent. Iron. There must have been deposits of it down here. And then later, as they're again trudging through these tunnels, we're at the iron-rich water scent that stuffed itself up her nose. I guess my question, I have no other evidence, is iron in Throne of Glass world is a magic suppressant, right? It suppresses magic. That's what it does. It is not said to suppress magic on Prithian. It's like a fabled magic suppressant in the human realm. They're like, oh, it suppresses magic. And then the Fae are like, no, it doesn't. The cauldron's made of it. It's like very like confused how iron actually impacts magic on Prithian. Is it shielding the planet somehow? I don't know. Because the people who are looking for it are mystics. And those mystics mostly seem to be Fae with magic, not Asteri, who are repelled by salt.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the power of the mystics? I don't know. We'll get into that too.
Yeah, different question. The mystics so far also seem to be Fae.
Well, the one mystic we know is Fae through Aurelia, right? And iron does not work on her.
You mean iron does work on her?
I mean, iron does work on her. That is what I mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, about the iron. Because I thought the iron, either way, I think this works. Like the iron is because the Midgard word is hunting. It's basically from blood, right? Because the Midgard worm is hunting. But even that still works. It's still a lot of iron within the core. I think that's interesting.
Many things on Prithian smell metallic, like even magic.
The magic smells metallic.
Smells metallic.
I think this is interesting.
Metallic.
I actually think this kind of works with my precog. So Bryce says to Vesperus, I have questions for you. If you don't answer them, I'm happy to leave you down here until the end of eternity. And Vesperus says, oh, this planet will be long dead before eternity has ended. Its star will expand and eventually devour everything in its path, including this world. Bryce says, thanks for the astronomy lesson. When Bryce is flippant about something like that, it typically means it's important and you should pay attention to it, right? So it says the star will expand and eventually devour everything in its path, including this world. We talked about how both the Asteri and the Starborn Fae seem to be able to absorb the power from the land, and that power is an evening star. Does Prithian somehow have a star inside it, or maybe 8 stars inside it, like you were talking about before, because there seems to be 8 different types of powers here. And like, right, I granted have not done like physics in a really long time, but isn't in the heart of a star, aren't there all these metals that are formed, and that's how they ended up like on our planet, because they came from a star originally?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how the planet would be containing it.
I have no idea on that, please. I have no fucking idea. Don't quote me. Haven't taken a class on astrophysics in 12 years at this point. But I mean, it wouldn't be, right? It simply wouldn't be. But this is fantasy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was an interesting line. The other thing that occurred to me, you read this quote so long ago at the beginning of this episode, many, many, many hours ago. But Rigelus says your Starborn line hails from a planet hails from an island of perpetual dusk, right? Mm-hmm. That is not how the solar courts work. We're specifically told that is not how the solar courts work, right? Reese says it can't always be night. I can't alter the path of the sun. But Rigelus is implying that was how it works at one point. So like,
he says,
what happened?
He says that the mainland had all of the times of the day, but that the island had perpetual twilight. So he was saying
feels very
only
important.
The prison's isle has perpetual twilight. Yeah.
But that feels incredibly important, right? Because we have that line from Reese early in ACOTAR about how he's not, like, the Night Court is not powerful enough to fuck with the flow of the sun, basically, right? But then we have this island that can stay in perpetual twilight.
Yes.
So I don't know. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Okay,
all right.
So we have
do we want to
nuclear fusion and controlling the sun.
Well, you want to talk about what we've talked about today? We've talked about prisms. We've talked about nuclear fusion. We've talked about stars. We've talked about matter and antimatter. Anyway, this was a fun one. All right. That is it for this week. If you want to follow us,
I hope you enjoyed it, guys. I think this was a fun episode. We kind of had to get this out of the way to just kind of set the stage for our Crescent City season. I think most of them aren't going to be this long. We'll find out. But I think we had a lot of good things to talk about. If you would like to follow us, we are Dragons in the Details Pod on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We are Dragons in the Details server on Discord. Our Discord is a super fun place. Always theories popping off in the Discord. We are dragonsinthedetails.com if you want to check out our website. We are hoping to start posting more content on that website soon, so keep an eye out for that. And you can also submit emails, queries, questions, comments, concerns through that email. There is a submission form there. Other than that, anything I'm missing? I think that was all of it. You can always email us, dragonsinthedetailspod@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. And I think that is it for this week. We will be back next week. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.